Chapter 945. Of the 4 protectors of the Demon Emperor's Gate, 3 of them were locked up in the men's prison with Xiao Daodu and Dai Lu. The last one was locked up in the women's prison with the 9 Poison Temple's palace master. A boorish man and ghost ended up like this, which could be considered as them reaping what they sowed. But Shadow and Yin Dove were also caught, which was a bit like being unjustly implicated. To be exact, it was all because of their pig teammates. Especially Ghost. Why did he say that? Because when he fought with Xiao Ziji, whether it was his movement or palm technique, they all contained an evil aura, which made it easy for Jun Changshao to determine that he might be a demonic cultivator. Thinking about how he had just beaten up the Demon Emperor's Gate's Vice Gate Master not long ago, and now there was a demonic cultivator pretending to challenge him, there must be some relationship between the two. I've sinned. During the battle, Jun Changshao transmitted his voice, "Take care of this guy with one punch." Yes. Xiao Ziji received the Patriarch's order, no longer being a punching bag. He used his full speed and strength and directly took care of Ghost. If the 2 were sent by the Demon Emperor's Gate, then there might be other companions hiding in the dark, so Jun Changshao ordered Lu Qianqian and the others to pay more attention. In the end, they really caught 2 more. Don't be afraid of a godlike opponent, but be afraid of a pig-like teammate. Words of wisdom. Yuan Gongzi. Jun Changxiao's gaze was cold. You're challenging my bottom line again. If the Demon Emperor's Gate's Vice Gate Master who was lying on the sickbed knew about this, he would definitely spit out 3 liters of blood. Jun Patriarch, this matter has nothing to do with me, they went there without permission. Patriarch. Li Qingyang walked into the main hall. How should we deal with these 4 people? Jun Changshao said, I was just worried that I couldn't find the hiding place of the Darkness Sect. Now that they've taken the initiative to deliver their heads to me, I naturally have to. With a cold expression, he said, interrogate them with torture. He seemed to be neutral in the matter between the Demon Emperor's Gate and the righteous sects, but in reality, he was searching for the Darkness Sect's base while the 2 sides were fighting. In the past, Jun Changshao had ambushed the disciples of the sect many times. Naturally, he would not let the matter rest. However, the Darkness Sect had been hiding for many years. Since they dared to stand in the open with the identity of the Demon Emperor's Gate, they definitely had nothing to fear. Even if they mobilized the power of their sects to wipe them out, they might be replaced by the Demon Monarch faction or Demon Monarch Palace. To deal with this kind of power, as long as he attacked, it had to be fatal. The Drizzle Hall's intelligence network was already in full operation. Jiang Ye was searching for clues all over the world. As long as the Demon Emperor's Gate continued to cause trouble with the righteous sects, they would be exposed sooner or later. This was also why the Vice Sect Master of the Demon Emperor's Gate, who could have easily killed him at Reflection Mountain, had let him go. Because the other party might only be one of the leaders. Killing him would have no effect, and it might even make the other party more vigilant. Jun Changshao pretended to be a neutral party. You guys kill by yourselves, I'll be in charge of watching the show. In reality, I'll be in charge of the overall situation in the dark. I'll wait until I find the Darkness Sect that had repeatedly targeted me. Then, I'll use Aria's sexy leather whip to whip them. Now. Catching 4 demonic cultivators was definitely a good opportunity. Did you take away the things they used to commit suicide? Jun Changshao asked. Li Qingyang said, Patriarch's foresight is godly. These people hid poison in their mouths, sleeves, and boots. This disciple fed them to the goats. After eating, they immediately died. It's not surprising that a death warrior would do such a thing. Jun Changshao said. Patriarch. Lu Wanshur walked in and wiped his tears. The few goats that disciple raised suddenly all died for no reason. Li Qingyang was silent, he quietly retreated, and then disappeared like the wind. Ah! Lu Wanshur chased out of the hall with a kitchen knife and roared loudly, Second senior brother, you dare to poison my goats. In the cell. Zhao Daodu placed one leg on the bed and said, "Seeing how the three of you were tortured so miserably, you must have offended the sect of all times to death." As the number one prisoner, he had experienced a lot of fellow prisoners. As long as he was injured when he entered, he would be able to deduce a few things. However, Zhao Daodu said, "Don't worry too much, from my experience, as long as the sect you represent pays enough ransom, you will definitely be politely released. You might even be given a meal." He was talking about the captured semi-sage of the world-defying sacred sect and the Haoguang sacred sect. "I'll tell you. The food of this sect of all times is simply delicious. If you can be redeemed, as long as you can eat a meal, it will definitely not be a loss. Of course. There's another possibility, which is to be recruited and surrendered. From my experience, if you guys aren't the kind of people who are unyielding, it's best for you to quickly surrender, because back then, there was a guy with purple hair who was very hard and was dragged out to be beaten up every day. In the end, he couldn't take it anymore and surrendered. Tell me, isn't he just suffering? The most tragic thing is someone like me. No one has any money to redeem me, and I don't want to surrender. I've been locked in a cell for at least 2 or 3 years. No, I'm afraid it's been 4 or 5 years. Zhao Daodu said as he wiped his tears. Little brat. Ghost, who had already woken up but had his chi meridian sealed and was severely injured, laid on the ground and grimaced, "You. If you continue to be noisy. Believe it or not, I'll kill you right now." After becoming a prisoner, he didn't even have the chance to die, which made him very annoyed. Now that there was a chattering fellow beside him, he was about to collapse. Compared to the three of them, Shadow was much happier. In the cell that was locked up, there was only a stern 9-poison temple palace master. Although the room was filled with spiders and scorpions, as a devil cultivator, he was naturally not afraid. Baldy. Zhao Daodu looked at Dai Lu, who seemed to be facing a wall, and earnestly advised, "Jun Patriarch advised you to enter the sect many times, why are you so stubborn?" "I am Dai Lu. Even if I die, I won't enter the sect of all times." "So." Zhao Daodu raised his thumb and said in admiration, "You are the most unyielding man I have ever seen in prison." Creak. At this moment, the door of the cell opened. Zhao Daodu quickly jumped down from the bed and hid in the corner. According to his experience, since a new prisoner was locked up, the sect of all times would definitely come to interrogate him. Sure enough. Jun Changshao walked in from outside and waved to the accompanying disciples. Shua. Li Fei and Tian Qi strode forward and hung up the heavily injured a boorish man and the other two with iron chains. "The three of you." Jun Changshao sat down and laughed, "Be lenient if you confess, be strict if you resist." A boorish man tried his best to raise his head and said, "We don't know anything, and we won't say anything. If you want to torture us, then give up." "Is that so?" Jun Changshao really didn't believe it, so he waved his hand and said, "Treat the three of you well." "Yes." Li Fei and Tian Qi clenched their fists and walked over. Just as they were about to make a move, Yao Menjing appeared at the door of the cell and said, "Patriarch, can I interrogate them?" She heard from Lu Wanshi that the sect had captured 4 demonic cultivator and hurriedly rushed over. "Little junior sister." Li Fei said, "It's better to leave the interrogation of prisoners to the senior brothers." Jun Changshao held his chin and said, "This girl is also a demonic cultivator, it seems like it's not bad to let her interrogate the demonic cultivator." Demonic cultivator? A boorish man and ghost tried their best to turn their necks to look at the door. Until they met Yao Menjing's eyes, their souls seemed to have suffered a heavy blow, and their hands and legs began to tremble uncontrollably. This scene was noticed by Jun Changshao. "Girl. I'll leave the three of them to you." "Yes." Yao Menjing walked in and said, "2 senior brothers, please let them go." Hua hua hua. The iron chains were pulled away. Plop. Plop. The untied boorish man and ghost directly knelt on the ground, their weak faces filled with fear and trepidation, as if they were very afraid of this little girl who suddenly appeared in the cell. Chapter 946. A boorish man and ghost were heavily injured, and their meridians were sealed. It was understandable that they were paralyzed on the ground, but it was inconceivable that they were kneeling on the ground. Xiao Daodu was stunned. The three brothers were hung up, and the determination in their eyes made him think that they were pure men like Dai Lu. He didn't think that they would be scared so quickly. Or was the girl who came in very strong? Xiao Daodu sneaked a glance and found that although Yao Menjing was very cute, there was nothing special about her. He couldn't help but think, could it be that these three brothers were persuaded by me? Instead of fighting to the end, why don't they just surrender? Because the little girl has the innate demon body and can invisibly intimidate demonic cultivators? Jun Chengshao guessed. Yao Menjing walked over and stood in front of the three kneeling people with her hands behind her back like a supreme ruler. She said, "Who gave you the courage to come to my sect of all times to cause trouble? Little junior sister is very cool." Li Fei thought. Bur, Gue Mei, and the other two did not dare to raise their heads as they knelt on the ground, trembling. Yao Menjing didn't release her cultivation, but her body emitted a supreme majesty that only they could feel. The pressure was so great that they didn't even dare to breathe. Speak. Plop. Plop. A boorish man and the other two were so shocked that they directly collapsed on the ground. Xiao Daodu's mouth twitched. This girl's voice was clearly very sweet. How did it scare them to this extent? Little girl. Jun Chengshao transmitted his voice, ask them who they are first. Okay. Yao Menjing said with a cold face, who are you? What sect are you from? A boorish man and ghost were fiercely struggling, but the fear that came from the depths of their souls forced them to speak in unison, we are from the Demon Emperor's Gate. Where is the Demon Emperor's Gate? In the Dusky Crow Mountain Range. The three wanted to keep their mouths shut, but their minds were always under the supreme pressure, so they could only choose to confess. Dusky Crow Mountain Range? Jun Chengshao thought, one of the three forbidden areas. There were many forbidden areas in the Starfall continent, and the three most terrifying ones, the Dusky Crow Mountain Range was one of them. The Dusky Crow Mountain Range was dark, and there were vicious beasts everywhere. There was even miasma that blocked spiritual sense. Even Wu Huang would be lost if he entered. Exact location, Yao Menjing said, we. The fuck? Jun Chengshao muttered to himself, so awesome. It's not easy for you to have your current cultivation. My patriarch is virtuous. Will you submit to him? Yao Menjing asked. Jun Chengshao was stunned. He asked the first question, but he didn't say this. The little girl was very perceptive now. Not bad, not bad. A boorish man and ghost's faces became ferocious. They were struggling in their hearts. Obviously, they were very resistant to submitting to Jun Chengshao. Answer me. Yao Menjing's eyes flashed with a strange light. It was as if she had turned into the great hero from 10,000 years ago who dared to fight against heaven and earth and the sun and moon. A boorish man and the other two were so scared that they fell to the ground. Every hair on their bodies stood on end. This girl's aura was too terrifying. It made them feel like they were at the top of a mountain. After going through the Demon Valley, Yao Menjing already had the potential of a demon emperor. The three pure demon cultivators would definitely be afraid of her. I submit. Hand over your soul origin. When Jun Chengshao held the soul origin in his hand, he was a little surprised. He didn't expect the three of them to submit so quickly and so thoroughly. Of course. He also realized that Yao Menjing would have such a miraculous effect on demon cultivators. If I had known, I would have taken her to the West Cloud State to find the Demon Emperor's Gate. Then, I would have directly incorporated this force. Jun Changshao thought to himself. Patriarch. Yao Menjing smiled. There is still a woman in prison. I will go and persuade her. Go. Jun Changshao said. He didn't leave the cell. He looked at Dai Lu, who was facing the wall and reflecting, and said, Boy, have you thought it through? Dai Lu didn't say anything. Even if the 3 demon cultivators admitted defeat in front of him and never joined the sect of all times, their hearts were never shaken. All kinds of protagonist lives played out here again and again. Only Brother Green Scarf still unswervingly defended the unyielding spirit. Jun Patriarch. Zhao Daodu cried. I want to join the sect of all times. He had said this many times, but he was ignored every time. This time, Jun Changshao said, You have experience in prison. You can be considered a talent. Stay here and enlighten the prisoners. Inform the cafeteria to send 3 meals a day on time. Don't let him starve. Yes. Bring these 3 to Medical Peak and let Sun Bukong treat them. Yes. Creak. The cell door closed again. Zhao Daodu, who was curled up in the corner, looked dazed. He wasn't distressed by the loss of his 3 cellmates. Instead, after a moment, he began to dance and laugh. Previously, it was 1 meal a day. Now, it was 3 meals a day. Happiness. Stay here and enlighten the prisoners. Recalling what Jun Changshao said before he left, Zhao Daodu gradually calmed down and said, Is he thinking highly of me? Jun Patriarch. He stood up and said with a firm gaze, I won't let you down. I will enlighten the prisoners. Baldy. Zhao Daodu appeared in front of Dai Lu and earnestly advised, Jun Patriarch has been very kind to you. As a person, you must know how to be grateful. Don't force yourself. Quickly surrender to the sect of all times. Life is like a cup of tea. It won't be bitter for a lifetime, but it will be bitter for a while. As long as you have a good attitude and don't give up, no matter how far the road is, the bitter will be over and the sweet will be over. Ding! Chicken soup for the soul instructor Zhao Daodu has come online. Yao Menjing was very good at dealing with demonic cultivators. Not long after she entered the women's prison, she brought Shadow's soul origin to the main hall and said, Patriarch, that woman has surrendered. Amazing. Jun Changshao gave her a thumbs up. Without Yao Menjing, who had the innate demonic body, it would be difficult to force the 4 demonic cultivators to surrender. That's right, girl. Jun Changshao said, the Demon Emperor's Gate's master has the innate demonic body. What do you think? Yao Menjing said with certainty, only this disciple has inherited the innate demonic body. There will not be a second one in the world. Jun Changshao rubbed his chin and said, in that case, this Demon Emperor's Gate deliberately lied to the outside world about the innate demonic body and then attracted all the demonic cultivators in the world. Patriarch. Yao Menjing said, if you are going to the Dusky Crow Mountain Range, please bring this disciple. She was very curious about who had the guts to pretend to have the innate demonic body that only she had. Yes. Jun Changshao nodded. Suddenly, a system notification sounded in his ears. Ding! Sect members, 500,0050000. Ding! Sect mission activated. In the mission pavilion, a new sect mission appeared. It meant that as long as the disciple completed it, the sect could be upgraded. Hall Master Li Jun Changshao transmitted his voice, notify the certification center and have them send someone to certify the sect's grade. Chapter 947. Another certification. In the certification center, Yi Tianqing was shocked when he heard the news. It hasn't been long since they were promoted to the 4th rate. According to the time in the Falling Star continent, it had indeed not been long. Elder Zhou, Elder Zhen. Yi Tianqing ordered, go ahead. Yes. Elder Zhou and Elder Zhen left the heavenly mandate Imperial City and rushed to the sect of all times. Especially when they thought about being able to eat Lu Wancher's cooking soon, they started drooling. After several certifications, the two of them could see that since the Sect of all times had applied again, they definitely had enough strength to pass. They were just going through the motions. The main point was that they could eat the delicious food of the world. If not for their status, the two elders would have liked to come to the Sect of all times every few days to eat. The next day, Elder Zhou and Elder Zhen arrived at the Sect of all times. When they saw the tall mountains, they were deeply shocked. They had been to this sect many times. Each time, there were different changes. This time, the changes were even more intense. They could even smell the heritage of a large sect. After the terrain modification, although the Sect of all times was still a fourth-rate sect, in terms of scale and environment, it was comparable to a first-rate or second-rate sect. Of course, the top power was not weak either. After all, there were cultivators like the Purple King and Ding Xingwang, who were at the level of Wu Sheng. The core disciples, led by Li Qingyang, had all broken through to the level of Wu Huang. Not to mention that they could shake the entire continent with a stomp of their feet, at least in terms of overall strength, they were not inferior to second-rate or third-rate sections. This was just the beginning. As more disciples entered the peak of Martial King and obtained the Surge Talisman, they would enter the dimensional battlefield for practical experience. There would only be more and more Emperor-level cultivators. There were as many King-level cultivators as dogs, and Emperor-level cultivators were everywhere. This sarcastic remark might be foreseen in the Sect of all times. Both of you. Jun Gosheng smiled and said, "Do you want to be certified first or eat first?" Eat. Elder Zhou and Elder Zhen said in unison. In the past, they could resist the urge to be certified first. Now, they simply stopped pretending. Let's do it. Just for the food. Please. Lu Wancher personally cooked and prepared a table full of delicacies. After the two of them ate, their souls were sublimated. The sky became bluer, and the mountains became taller. June Patriarch. Elder Zhou said, "Let's get it verified." Please. Jun Changshao was the first to walk out of the cafeteria. Then, he gathered all the upper echelons and disciples of the sect and began the strength assessment. June Patriarch. After an hour of rigorous testing, Elder Zhou handed over a token with the words third-rate engraved on it and said, "Congratulations on your sect's promotion to a third-rate sect." Thank you. Jun Changshao took it. Ding. Congratulations to the host for upgrading the sect to third-rate. The reward is 10,000 achievement points and 10,000 contribution points. Ding. Sect contribution points, 3930050000. Ding. Sect achievement value, 22200500000. After hearing the notification, Jun Changshao opened the system panel. When he saw that the sect had been upgraded from fourth-rate to third-rate, a bright smile appeared on his face. After many years of hard work, he had turned a ninth-rate sect into one of the top third-rate sects in the Falling Star continent. He felt a sense of accomplishment. Beep! Beep! Jun Changshao yelled, "Let's have a banquet tonight to celebrate the sect's promotion to third-rate." All right. Lu Wancher led the cafeteria members and started to get busy. Swoosh! 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 In the kitchen, Ma Yongning and Lin Yao stood on opposite sides. They looked at each other and quickly pulled out their kitchen knives. Instantly, a crisscrossing light appeared. Swish! 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 Outside, Qian Buduo was working hard to clean the ingredients for the banquet. Although the process was a little boring, he was very happy doing it. The little guy had completely adapted to the life in the sect of all times. Every day, he would wake up before the rooster crows to clean the ingredients for his fellow sect members. My hands were born to wash vegetables. The cafeteria members were busy preparing for the banquet. Jun Changshao came to the medicine hall and greeted the 4 injured demon cultivators. He said it was a greeting. But it was actually a question. For example, what kind of force was the Demon Emperor's gate? How many disciples did it have? How many strongholds did it have? A boorish man and the others, who had their soul origins controlled, could only tell the truth, although they were unwilling. Protector. Jun Changshao touched his chin and said, I don't have a position in the sect of all times yet. Under normal circumstances, a large sect had positions such as the Patriarch, Deputy Patriarch, Elder, Protector, Hall Master, and so on. The sect of all times currently only had elders and hall masters. Not to mention a protector, there wasn't even a deputy patriarch. A protector was obviously lower than an elder. In layman's terms, it was similar to a hired thug. A boorish man and ghosts group of 4 had such a position in the Demon Emperor's gate. That was why they were the main force in the battle against the righteous sects in the West Cloud State. Once the upper limit of members is raised, I can consider letting the 4 of them become protectors of the sect of all times. Jun Changshao muttered. There weren't many demon cultivators in the sect. It wasn't a bad idea to take in a boorish man and the others. Patriarch. Li Luoqiu walked into the hall and said, Elder Jiang sent news that the Demon Emperor's gate's base might be in the Dusk Crow Mountain range. Although Jun Changshao had already heard about it from a boorish man and the others, he was still very confident that Jiang Ye could find this crucial information. Tell Elder Jiang not to enter blindly. Jun Changshao said. The reason why the Darkness sect was a headache was because they were always hidden in the dark. Now that they knew the location of the stronghold, there was nothing to worry about. Demon Emperor's Gate. Jun Changshao leaned back in his chair and rubbed his fingers as he said with a smile, wait until this king and the entire sect have a good drink. Then, I'll look for you to have some fun. When the time comes, don't admit defeat. His smile was very scary. Night came. A bonfire flickered on the practice field, illuminating the surroundings. Rows of tables were placed side by side, filled with delicious food and wine. Open the wine. Peng peng peng. The seal was removed and the disciples filled the cups. Jun Changshao raised his cup and said, May our sect exist forever and live as long as the heavens. Exist forever and live as long as the heavens. Gulp. Gulp. All the disciples drank a bowl of wine. Junior brother Yi. Tian Qi said in surprise, Why aren't you drinking? Yi Xingqian said indifferently, not interested. Ha ha ha. Li Fei laughed, Junior brother Yi must be afraid. If you drink too much, you'll dance around the fire like last time. Night Emperor was very embarrassed about that matter. Hearing him say it, he wanted to flip the table. Junior brother. Li Fei came over with a bowl of wine and smiled, the sect becoming a third-rate sect is a joyous matter. You should drink some, right? Of course. If you're afraid of losing your composure, then I won't force you to drink. This was really touching a sore spot. Yan Yo was even angrier. He suddenly stood up and picked up a bowl of wine and said with a cold face, Drink. Come. Gulp gulp. Again. Come. Senior brother Yi and senior brother Li are fighting. All the disciples gathered around. Jun Changshao, who was sitting in front of the hall, saw Yi Xingqian being so wild and said happily, This damned Sundara is changing bit by bit. But, he looked at Lu Qianqian, who was sitting alone at the table, and shook his head, she doesn't seem to have changed. Senior sister Lu. Yao Menjing rested her chin on the table and looked at her senior brothers drinking to their heart's content. She said pitifully, I want to drink too. Lu Wanshi, who also rested her chin on the table, said, Why wouldn't I want to? Sigh. In the prison, Zhao Daodu stood at the window and looked at the happy sect of all times disciples outside. He said enviously, When can I join this happy and harmonious sect? Creak. The prison door opened. 1 black and 2 black brought in a few plates of delicious food and a jar of wine, and said, "This is a reward from the sect." "Thank you, thank you." Zhao Daodu quickly ran over and sniffed the food and wine. His soul immediately floated to the sky and stood shoulder to shoulder with Li Tianxiang. Useless. Dai Lu, who had been facing the wall, stood up and sat in front of the table. He picked up his chopsticks and started eating. During this period, as long as someone brought food to him, he would eat it without hesitation. However, he wasn't tempted by the food and remained firm. "Damn! You ate all the food again." The banquet didn't end until late at night. Yi Xingqian and Li Fei drank 2 jars of wine and then staggered back to their residence. The next day, they were found lying outside the outhouse. Chapter 948. Rustle, rustle, rustle. Rustle, rustle, rustle. In the dark forest, a group of people walked quietly. Soft rustling sounds came from the grass and trees. This was a group of warriors in battle robes and masks. Although they didn't emit any martial arts aura, judging from their actions, they must be first-class experts. Patriarch. A warrior walking in front stopped and transmitted his voice. "Spiritual senses are restricted. I can only see within 2 feet. He could tell from the voice that it was Li Qingyang. Behind him were Lu Qianqian, Shao Ziji, Li Fei, Tian Qi, He Wudi, and other core disciples. Where was Night Emperor? He was also in the group. However, at this moment, he was screaming in his heart, "Why did I sleep outside the outhouse yesterday? Last time at the Sect's banquet, he drank too much and danced in front of the bonfire. Yesterday, he drank too much and slept outside the room." This was definitely a blow to his self-esteem. "No, no." Yi Xingqian said, "I won't touch a drop of alcohol in the future." In order to avoid any more stains, he immediately decided to quit drinking. Indeed. Jun Changshao sat on a tree and nibbled on an apple. Although the miasma here is not poisonous, it has the effect of isolating spiritual senses. Under the tree stood the Purple King, King of 100 Hills, Ding Xingwang, and Yao Menjing. The upper echelons and core disciples of the sect were all here. This meant that the area they were in now was the Dusk Crow Mountain that terrified the entire Falling Star continent. After taking down the 4 protectors of the Demon Emperor's Gate, the other party would definitely receive the news. Therefore, they went wild yesterday and brought their top forces to attack. "Elder Jiang." Jun Changshao said, "Can you penetrate it?" "No." Jiang Ye shook his head. He had been waiting outside the Dusk Crow Mountain for a long time. He also tried to use his primordial spirit to spy, but when he extended it to the miasma area, it was suddenly separated by some force. The system said, it is difficult for spiritual senses to spread in the miasma area. If the host wants to find the moving demon gate, it will be as difficult as ascending to heaven. As difficult as ascending to heaven? Jun Changshao said, "I don't believe it." Shua. With a wave of his hand, he took out a compass-like treasure-searching tool and said, "The Demon Emperor's Gate must have many treasures. Perhaps we can use this to search for them." Buzz. His will entered the treasure-seeking tool, and it began to shine brightly. Whoosh. Whoosh. After a while, specks of light appeared one after another, and all of them gathered in a certain area. As expected. Jun Changshao was overjoyed. The treasure detector is not affected by the miasma. The system, it had long been accustomed to being slapped in the face at lightning speed as soon as it finished speaking. "Let's go." Jun Changshao led the group deeper into the cave according to the location given by the treasure finder. After walking for a while, the light spots suddenly changed and collectively appeared in the southeast. Looks like it's time to activate the transfer function of the formation. The Demon Emperor's Gate was hidden in the Dusk Crow Mountain range, and it was supported by a formation that could be moved at any time. Even if others knew about it, it would be extremely difficult to find it inside. However, Jun Changshao, who had the treasure finder in his hands, did not care at all. Because no matter how you move, as long as the sect's treasure is still there, I will always be able to find it. In the deepest part of the Dusk Crow Mountain range, there was a group of buildings. If Li Qingyang saw it, he would definitely be able to deduce the time of construction from the structure and color. At this moment, in a building that looked like a hall, there were dozens of masked men in black. Yuan Gongzi has always emphasized not to provoke the sect of all times, but in the end, he was injured by that Jun Changshao. He really brought this upon himself. An old man in black gloated. He had to push the sect out and openly fight with the famous righteous sections. What a stupid decision. Elder Han, in the previous meeting, you were very supportive of Yuan Gongzi's actions. Why are you suddenly opposing it now? As long as it's beneficial to the sect, this old man will agree. As long as it's harmful to the sect, this old man will oppose it. There was no one else who could describe both sides of the fence in such a refreshing and refined manner. All right. The man in black sitting closest to the main seat said, this time, I gathered all of you here not to criticize Yuan Gongzi, but to discuss the next step. Very simple. Elder Han said, let the sect continue to hide in the dark and ambush those arrogant righteous sections. There's also the sect of all times. Someone said, this old man thinks that we can continue to carry out the previous plan. The previous plan was to target the sect of all times and Jun Changshao, but it was later stopped by Yuan Gongzi. Now that the latter was at a disadvantage, it was naturally impossible to stop them. That purple-haired fellow was able to injure and intimidate for Wu Sheng. This means that the sect of all times has now become a force to be reckoned with. If we want to get rid of it, I'm afraid we'll have to pay a price. Therefore, Yuan Gongzi was completely wrong to stop us from targeting this sect. In an elegant courtyard, Yuan Gongzi sat in the pavilion with a pale face. He had not completely recovered from being hit by Jun Changshao's palm. Young master, a martial artist said, Jiang Lingshan has called for an elders' meeting. They're definitely targeting you. Yuan Gongzi shook his head and said, these old fellows have been waiting to see me make a fool of myself. Now, they've seized the opportunity. Sigh. He sighed and said, it's also my fault for forcing Jun Changshao to become enemies with the righteous sects. In the end, I went for wool and came home shorn. Young master, that martial artist said, this old servant thinks that you're too afraid of this kid. If you had mobilized your forces to destroy this sect from the start, there wouldn't have been so much trouble. Destroy? Yuan Gongzi shook his head and said, a sect that can rise so quickly. If it didn't have a powerful trump card, it would have been destroyed long ago. Young master. At this moment, a black-clothed man walked in and said, Elder Jiang and the others have rejected your plan. They've decided to use force against the sect of all times. Yuan Gongzi clenched his fist and said, to be able to intimidate for Wu Sheng, the strength of the sect of all times is obvious to all. If these old fellows continue to provoke them, they'll undoubtedly push the sect into a bottomless abyss. Right now, he was very angry. If it weren't for a group of idiotic teammates who offended the sect of all times without permission, he might have reached an agreement with Jun Changshao back in Maple Valley and joined forces against the righteous sects. Young master, there's one more thing that this old servant needs to report to you. Speak. A boorish man and the others have lost contact. Lost contact? The black-clothed man said, after young master was injured by Jun Changshao, a boorish man and ghost left. They might have gone to the sect of all times to avenge you. What? Yuan Gongzi stood up abruptly. Because he used too much strength, he couldn't suppress his injuries and immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. He then said angrily, a bunch of useless fools. This old servant is wondering if we should go look for them. Yuan Gongzi suppressed his anger and supported himself on the stone table. How long has it been since we lost contact? 3 days. The black-clothed man said. Sigh. Yuan Gongzi sat down, his entire person haggard. He said, "There's no need to look for them. They must have died in the sect of all times. Their soul life slips haven't shattered." Haven't shattered? Yuan Gongzi was startled. Could they have been captured by the sect of all times? The black-clothed man was about to speak when he heard a report. He said, "Southwest Yangzhou sent the latest news. On the day of the sect of all times recruitment, a boorish man and ghost came to challenge them. They were brutally beaten by the sect of all times disciples, Yi Xingqian and Xiao Ziji. They were also brought up the mountain and never came down again. They really were captured." Yuan Gongzi said, "They didn't even have the chance to commit suicide." Suddenly, he realized something and his expression changed. A boorish man and the others wouldn't have leaked the sect's location, right? These four were personally groomed by young master. They shouldn't have betrayed the sect, right? The black-clothed man said. No. Yuan Gongzi said, "If it were any other sect, I believe that a boorish man and the others wouldn't have leaked the information. But this Jun Changshao might have a way to force it out. It doesn't matter even if he does." The black-clothed man said confidently, "Our sect is hidden in the Dusk Crow mountain range and has a teleportation formation. He definitely won't be able to find it." Yuan Gongzi's brows furrowed even tighter. He said, "Jun Changshao can't be judged by common sense. Quickly inform the Elder Hall and have them raise their guard. If he really comes here, then, boom." Before he could finish speaking, a deafening roar suddenly came from outside the mountain gate. The originally invisible sect formation instantly appeared. "Yuan Gongzi. I've specially come to pay a visit today." Hearing Jun Changxiao's voice, Yuan Gongzi sat on the stone bench and said with a dazed expression, "This guy really came here." Chapter 949. Outside the Demon Emperor's Gate. Field cannons were set up on high points, and smoke filled the air. The cannonball bombarded the area, and a light barrier gradually appeared. It meant that the Demon Emperor's Gate had a sect-protecting formation. This situation was very normal. Which powerful sect didn't have some protective measures? "I've sinned," Jun Changshao said, "Fire another cannon." He had fought with the Demon Emperor's Gate many times and could be considered an old friend. Since he had come from afar, it would be embarrassing if he gave him a greeting gift. Bang! A deafening sound came again. The cannonball, which carried a powerful force, once again smashed into the sect-protecting formation. Immediately, billowing smoke covered the sky. Ka ka ka. Suddenly, the sound of cracking could be heard. It was as if the ancient formation, which had existed for a long time, couldn't withstand the cannonball's bombardment and completely collapsed. Then, it turned into a sky full of light and disappeared with the wind. "Patriarch," Xiao Ziji said in shock, "using hexagram stones to make cannonballs is much more powerful than crystal cores. No wonder the two cannonballs were more powerful than the formation that bombarded the Scarlet Sea continent." It turned out that the energy was gathered from the spirit stones of the Nine Heavens continent. In order to leave a good impression on the Demon Emperor's Gate, Jun Gosheng had paid a big price for this visit. Swish! Swish! After the formation was broken, dozens of light beams flew out and hovered in front of the gate, glaring angrily. These people were the elders who had been talking in the main hall. "TSK TSK. Jun Changshao said, "Your sect has quite a few experts. Looks like you've been living in seclusion for thousands of years and have kept a low profile." More than 20 half-saints flew out, and Wusheng had at least 8 of them. Even the top sects of the Starfall continent might not be able to produce such a lineup. If placed in the planar battlefield, it would be very ordinary. Because many high-level continents could produce such a lineup, and they could even produce several of them. If he hadn't gone to the planar battlefield and experienced the crazy slaughter, Jun Changshao might have panicked when he saw so many half-saints and Wusheng. But now, he could face them with a smile. Too little, too little. Give me more, then I'll be fired up. Shwa! Shwa! Another 100 disciples of the Demon Emperor's Gate appeared. Judging from their auras, the weakest among them was a martial king. There were also dozens of Wu Huang. Li Qingyang and the others remained expressionless. They, who had also experienced the slaughter of the planar battlefield, were completely unperturbed by such a small scene. However, there was one thing that couldn't be denied. With so many top forces and core forces, the Devil Emperor's sect was truly powerful. No wonder he dared to go against the righteous sects. At this moment, the scene that appeared was of a few dozen people from the sect of all times led by Jun Changshao facing off against nearly 100 high-ranking officials and disciples of the Demon Emperor's Gate. The air seemed to have frozen, and a murderous aura gathered around them. A great battle was imminent. Jun Changshao. The Demon Emperor's Gate elder named Jiang Lingshan, who stood at the front, said in a low voice, "How did you find this place?" This was the most puzzling thing for him and the high-ranking officials. After all, the sect was hidden in the depths of the Dusk Crow mountain range, and there was a spell formation that moved at fixed times. Without a special method, finding it was like finding a needle in a haystack. How I found this place is no longer important. Jun Changshao cupped his hands and said, "What's important is that I came here for only one purpose, and that is." He paused, and with a cold gaze, he said, "To settle accounts." Whoosh! Whoosh! As soon as he finished speaking, the space suddenly rippled. Two Wuxing-level Demon Emperor's Gate elders appeared out of thin air, and their withered hands, which carried a sky full of demonic aura, pressed down. They weren't from the righteous sects, and they paid a lot of attention before fighting. If they could get rid of their target as quickly as possible, they would definitely attack without hesitation. Boom! Boom! Two explosions were heard, and the space was shaken to the point of distorting. The two Wu Sheng who suddenly launched a sneak attack were blasted away, and then they hung awkwardly in front of the sect gate, their eyes filled with astonishment. Jun Changshao was still standing with his hands behind his back. The Purple King and the King of 100 Hills, who were standing beside him, retracted their fists, and demonic aura spread out from their bodies, causing the area not only to be filled with demonic aura, but also a frightening evil aura. This, Jun Changshao said, another account. Jiang Lingshan said coldly, "You've killed many people from my Demon Emperor's Gate over the years, and this old man hasn't gone to your sect of all times to settle accounts." That's right. They had targeted the sect of all times before, but didn't they go for wool and come home shorn? If they were talking about settling accounts, the Demon Emperor's Gate could list out a bunch of them. Whoosh! Whoosh! More and more Demon Emperor's Gate disciples rushed out from the inner and outer courts, and the number gradually increased to 1,000, 2,000. Jun Changshao didn't expect that an organization that had been hiding in the dark all year round would have so many disciples, and from the aura they emitted, not only were they all demonic cultivators, but the lowest cultivation level was at least peak Wuzong. Go! Jiang Lingshan's eyes were cold. The sect of all times suddenly attacked and even broke the sect's protective array, and anyone with a temper couldn't stand it. Fight! This was a must. Whoosh! Whoosh! In an instant, the Demon Emperor's Gate's higher-ups and disciples rushed out, and the demonic aura exploded, causing the space to distort violently. Clang! Clang! As they moved, Lu Qianqian, Li Qingyang, and the others drew their weapons, and their eyes flashed with strong fighting spirit. Although they had a lot of fun fighting in the dimensional battlefield, they didn't dare to go too far in the outer courts, but now that they were in their own home, they didn't have to care. Bang! At this moment, the purple craggy monster king tore off his clothes and rushed forward naked. He gathered purple energy in his hands and directly restrained the 5 martial sages who were flying toward him. 1 against 5. This was definitely Hall Leader Zi's daily routine. Although the King of 100 Hills wasn't as strong as the Purple King, he also restrained one Wusheng, and the two sides instantly engaged in a fierce battle in midair. Boom! Boom. In a short period of time, the two sides exchanged dozens of blows, and the energy raged wildly, causing the space to collapse on a large scale. The Demon Emperor's Gate was worried that the fight would affect the sect, and the Purple King and the King of 100 Hills were worried that Li Qingyang and the others would be affected, so both sides tacitly distanced themselves from each other. Die! At that moment, another martial saint stepped out of the void and attacked Jun Changshao. It was obvious that he wanted to capture the leader of the bandits. Kakik! Suddenly, a strange laughter came from behind. Ding Xingwang stealthily circled behind his back and unleashed his 5 ultimate palm imprints. Boom! 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 That demon cultivator Wusheng turned around awkwardly. Although he dissolved the attacks one by one, he was still entangled. Of the 8 Wusheng from the Demon Emperor's Gate, 7 were targeted by the Sect of All Time's higher-ups, and only Jiang Lingshan was left. Old man. Jun Changshao waved his hand and summoned Jade Dragon Asks the Heavens, saying, "Let's fight." Swoosh. He flew toward the sky at high speed. Jiang Lingshan sneered and chased after him with a burst of demonic energy. However, he also transmitted a message to the disciples of the Demon Emperor's Gate, telling them to kill all the disciples of the Sect of All Times outside the gate. What a coincidence! Jun Changshao also transmitted a message, "I'll leave these small fries to you." Yes. Li Qingyang, Shao Ziji, and the others took out all kinds of equipment and got into various battle stances. The camera zoomed out, and their bodies seemed to be rapidly turning black, and their eyes gradually turned red, like demons that had been released from the seal of hell. The disciples of the Demon Emperor's Gate who received the Elder's order were about to charge out in anger, but when they saw the terrifying eyes of the disciples of the Sect of All Times, they couldn't help but shudder. Chapter 950. The core disciples of the Sect of All Times were like demons that had been unsealed. The disciples of the Demon Emperor's Gate were so shocked that they couldn't help but tremble. To be exact, their morale had been suppressed even before the battle started. Kill! Kill! The 20 half-sages led the charge. They were amazed by the excellent equipment of the disciples of the Sect of All Times. However, their cultivation was higher, so they were naturally fearless. Junior brothers. Li Qingyang transmitted his voice. These people are too weak compared to the mystic-level experts. Just fight in your normal state. Okay. Everyone nodded with a smile on their faces. Although they had just entered Wu Huang's level, they had all kinds of equipment. They were really not afraid of the half-step Wusheng from the Falling Star continent. Whoosh! Whoosh! Suddenly, a blazing flame came from behind. Little Long Long activated its second form and flew over with a sky full of flames. Since its master and the higher-ups of the Sect of All Times were holding back Wusheng from the Demon Emperor's Gate, these half-sages would be left to it. Roar! Roar! The roars of spirit beasts came from the forest. The beasts led by Elder Nyo also rushed out. In this battle against the Demon Emperor's Gate, Jun Patriarch had not only brought the higher-ups and core disciples, but also the elites of the Spirit Beast Hall. If not for the limited space and environment, it was not impossible to escalate the small-scale battle into a large-scale battle with the various legions of the War Cavalry Hall. Therefore, when Jun Changshao decided to play seriously, the strength of the Sect of All Times could be shown. Settle the score. He was serious. Whoosh! 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 Little Long Long rushed over like a cannonball. The fiery energy wreaked havoc. The few half-sages at the front felt the irritation and heat, and their expressions changed greatly. Boom! Boom! Fiery fists rained down, filling the air. Whoosh! 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 Several half-sages staggered to meet the attack and were instantly sent flying. Their chests were all charred black, and their skin seemed to be torn apart. Boom! The half-saint at the front fell to the ground and spat out blood with a pale face. Suddenly, in his blurred vision, a little girl with bare feet walked over. She squatted in front of him and gently raised her small white hand. She smiled and said in a light voice, "Let me have you." The half-step saint was startled, and his pupils contracted. "No," boom. Suddenly, an explosive sound came from the ground. Immediately, a deep pit with a radius of several feet appeared, and some feathers fluttered in the air. As for the half-saint who had been injured by the little dragon, his chest had caved in like an eagle's claw. His eyes were wide open, but he had already died. Shua! Xiao Maxian stood up and turned to look at the demon emperor's gate high up in the air, a brilliant smile on her face. Her smile was very cute. However, the half-saint who met his gaze was drenched in cold sweat. She was definitely a demoness. Hoo-hoo. Hoo-hoo-hoo. At this time, several half-sages rapidly approached. All sorts of energies erupted, hurtling towards Xiao Maxian. Who? The little dragon appeared behind her. His hands reached out from the flames and instantly blasted out dozens of palm prints, scaring away all of the half-sages. Then, he coldly said, "Woman, hurry up and screw off." "You," Xiao Maxian angrily glared at him. Her feet touched the ground and she flew up. Her jade-like hands waved in the air, gathering feathers in the air and shooting forwards like hidden weapons. Pang! 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 Light flashed in the air. The high-level figures of the Demon Emperor's gate were thrown into confusion. Although Jun Changxiao's two contract beasts didn't have the slightest bit of tacit understanding and liked to bicker with each other, in this brief exchange of blows the dozens of half-sages were deeply shocked by the might that erupted from them. And this was only the beginning. This was because Old Bull had already brought his powerful spirit beasts to kill their way over. In terms of strength, they weren't necessarily stronger than half-sages. But, their mortal bodily defenses were extremely high and they were able to hold back the half-sages without any pressure. Go! A half-sage shouted out to the frightened disciples of the Demon Emperor's gate. Kill! Kill! The disciples regained their composure and released their demonic energy. Then, they rushed towards Li Qingyang and the others. At present, Wu Sheng and the half-step Wu Sheng sects were evenly matched. But, in terms of the number of disciples, the Demon Emperor's gate had a clear advantage. This was because they had 2,000 to 3,000 disciples. In contrast, the sect of all times only had a dozen or so core disciples. It wasn't the number that mattered, but the quality. Li Qingyang and the others each had a 6-piece divine armor set. They really weren't afraid of several thousand demonic cultivators. Not to mention, although there were many of them, they weren't all at the yellow level like on the battlefield. Hoo-hoo. Hoo-hoo-hoo. The first to rush over were the Emperor-level powerhouses of the Demon Emperor's gate. They displayed their spiritual power-type demonic skills. Black energy filled the sky and came crashing down from all directions. Facing so much energy, Li Qingyang and the others remained unmoved. This was because Xiao Ziji had already stepped forward. He spread out his hands and shouted, "Shield erect." Hoo-hoo. The earth element spread out from his arms and instantly merged with the earth. The earth cracked rapidly. For shield-like defensive walls appeared and enveloped all his fellow disciples. Boom! 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 All kinds of energy blasted on the shield walls. Although there were many of them and their power was extraordinary, they couldn't move the walls at all. Shua! Shua! As soon as the attack was over, Li Fei used his movement technique and flew out of the defensive area. Wherever he passed, rays of light burst out, like a rubber ball, dragging streams of light as they blasted in different directions. Boom! Boom! The martial artists of the Demon Emperor's gate couldn't dodge in time. They suffered the bombardment of energy with all kinds of aptitudes and staggered to the ground. Die! Suddenly, a cold voice came from the sky. Yixingchen had already rushed over. He unsheathed his true yang sword and flashed with sharp light. Retreat, retreat, retreat. Whoosh! 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 The 6 emperors of the Demon Emperor's Gate didn't have time to retreat. The cold and sharp sword chi came to disturb them. Their bodies froze on the spot, and fine sword marks appeared on their necks. Finally, they fell to the ground with their minds destroyed. In terms of killing people, if one couldn't kill them in one strike, practicing martial arts would be meaningless to Yi Anyo. Too scary. They are not human. They are demons. Fighting with such monsters, I might as well kill myself. I'm too trashy. I shouldn't live in this world. Plop. Plop. The dozens of demonic sect disciples who were standing in the front row suddenly knelt down and cried out in despair. They even thought that living for one more second was an insult to the air. Shwa. He Woody flew over and hovered above these martial artists who had lost confidence in life. He raised 2 fingers and said, "Then go to hell." Whoosh! Whoosh! The 7 mysterious sunglow was used. The red and orange lights instantly pierced through the air and pierced through the chests of more than 20 demonic cultivators. After killing the target, Li Fei, who was squatting on a tree far away, looked at the disciples of the Demon Emperor's Gate in another direction. He put his index and middle fingers together and placed them on his temples. His eyes focused, and an invisible force of depression spread out in an instant. Many of the martial artists whose cultivation levels were below Wuzong and Martial King lost their ability to fight. Then, they knelt on the ground and cried while holding their heads. "Father, Mother, you were wrong to give birth to me. My existence in such a beautiful world is an unforgivable stain." Shwa! Shwa! He Wudi and Yixingchen flew over. After the 2 main damage dealers assisted in controlling the target, they killed the demon cultivators effortlessly. Hiss hiss hiss. Li Qingyang also rushed over. Lightning wrapped around the true yang sword, and the power of the sword increased greatly. Perhaps they also knew that the Demon Emperor's Gate had too many people and it was not suitable for a long battle. Therefore, the core disciples of the sect of all times who had special constitutions were not stingy. They only wanted to end the battle quickly. Chapter 951. In the sky above the dusky Crow Mountain range, a powerful force was exploding wildly. The mountain rocks and trees were all destroyed, and the space was also shattered. The Purple King was fighting against 5 Wu Sheng in the manner of a king. Every move he made was filled with the power to swallow mountains and rivers. In terms of appearance, this guy was more flirtatious than Yixingchen. After all, no matter how much he transformed into a human, he still had the blood of the beast race. If he could get rid of his habit of showing off, he could definitely make a name for himself. Boom! Boom! The 5 Wu Sheng used all their skills and threw out all kinds of martial arts as if they were free. In the end, they couldn't do anything to the Purple King. It wasn't that they were bullying them. With the Purple King's current state, even if he stood in the air and let them take turns to attack him, he might not be able to do anything. What kind of monster is he? The elder of the Demon Emperor's Gate completely collapsed. Jun Changshao dared to come to the Demon Emperor's Gate for 2 reasons. First, he had the Unstoppable Blade as his trump card. Second, he relied on the Purple King. And that guy was definitely the strongest trump card of the sect of all times. All these years, Lu Wancher's fried rice didn't go to waste. The Purple King always thought that he was enduring humiliation and feigning civility. He never admitted that he was really good. However, as long as he was sent to fight, he wouldn't slack off. At that time, Jun Changshao had also deliberately tested him. The Purple King said solemnly, "My beast race is not like you humans. All you do is scheme and scheme. As long as I agree to work with you, I will definitely do my best. Although the beast race was cruel and ruthless, they didn't have many tricks up their sleeves. As long as they decided on something, they wouldn't turn back. Elder Nyo and the other spirit beasts were the same. They obeyed the Purple King's orders. Now that they were members of the Sect of all times, they took beast pills every day and had stronger heaven and earth attributes. Naturally, they would do their best for Jun Changshao. Therefore, without absolute strength, Jun Changshao dared to challenge the Demon Emperor's gate because of these spirit beasts. Boom! Boom! On the other side, the King of 100 Hills was still fighting with Wu Sheng. From the looks of it, he was gradually gaining the upper hand. Ding Xingwang had to be the fanciest of all. Facing the demonic cultivators who were equally unscrupulous, he had already used all kinds of sinister methods. The battle between the Purple Craggy Demon King and the King of 100 Hills was unrestrained. They used their thick demon qi to deal with their opponents. Old Ding and the Martial Saint did not fight head-on. They were looking for opportunities to sneak attack. One sword for 30,000 miles. Sword qi chills 19 continents. At this moment, Jun Changxiao's cold voice came from the sky. A sword qi that seemed to sweep across heaven and earth tore through the sky, leaving a huge sword mark. Jiang Lingshan's expression changed. He hurriedly used the ghost movement technique and escaped from the area affected by the sword qi as fast as he could. Whoosh, the sword qi whizzed past and disappeared from the forest. Boom, boom, boom. The trees within 1,000 feet were cut in half. Then, they all fell to the ground. The originally dense area lost a piece of it as if it was shaved off. Whoosh! Jiang Lingshan, who dodged, was suspended in the air. His eyes were filled with fear. Your weapon is the Jade Dragon, asks the Heaven's Sword that the Demon Emperor once collected. Jun Changshao smiled. There's more than one. More than one. Jiang Lingshan's eyes were filled with shock. Then, he looked at that guy's armor and said in disbelief, is this the 9 phosphor armor? Swish! Jun Changshao came with his sword and slashed out another sword qi that tore through space. Jiang Lingshan hurriedly used his movement technique to dodge and shouted, Kid, since you have the equipment that the Demon Emperor collected back then, you must have been to the Demon Valley. Yes. Jun Changshao said, I have been there. Impossible, impossible. Jiang Lingshan denied himself. The Demon Emperor left the Demon Valley as a forbidden area for the righteous sects to go there like moths to a flame. How could you find these equipment so easily? Because I'm handsome. Jun Changshao rushed over again. When the Jade Dragon, asks the Heaven's Sword, cut through the void, the second move of the Ling Jian divine technique was performed. It instantly formed a powerful sword aura. Jiang Lingshan, who was shrouded, slowed down greatly. It was a little difficult to dodge, so he waved his hands. A light circle flew out of the void and collided with the sword qi. Boom! There was an explosion, and light fragments were everywhere. The light circle that Jiang Lingshan threw out was a defensive treasure. Although the quality was good, it was instantly shattered in front of the Jade Dragon, asks the Heaven's Sword. In terms of strength, it was okay. If he could crush him in terms of equipment. Old man. Jun Changshao attacked again and said, back then, you sent people to kidnap my sect's disciples in the West Fate State. This is the first debt. I will settle it with you. Swoosh. Swoosh. The linear sword technique was performed, and hundreds of sword lights poured down in an instant. Jiang Lingshan's equipment was not good, but he was still strong. He used the gloomy demonic energy and turned it into fist and palm prints, breaking all the incoming sword qi. Boom! Suddenly, there was an explosion in the distance. A Demon Emperor's Gate disciple, Wu Sheng, was punched down by the Purple King. Blood spurted out of his mouth as he sank into the ground. Jiang Lingshan's expression turned ugly. He released his spiritual senses to look at the mountain gate and found that thousands of his disciples were being beaten up by more than 10 Sect of all times disciples. Damn it! How could a small fourth-rate sect be so strong? Yuan Gongzi had always emphasized not to provoke the sect of all times, but he and the higher-ups did not agree. They thought that Guy was too cautious in his actions. However, when they saw the power of the patriarch of the sect of all times and the higher-ups of the imperial city, they realized that they had been slapped in the face. The only thing that comforted Jiang Lingshan was that there were many half-saints in the sect. The sect of all times was inferior in this aspect. Although they were a little embarrassed at first, they had adapted and were gradually gaining the upper hand. Boom! 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 At this moment, a dazzling explosion suddenly appeared, emitting a powerful force of thunder and lightning. It directly shook and collapsed a small part of the space. Swoosh! 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 4 half-saints from the Demon Emperor's Gate happened to be in the explosion area. They immediately fell down like broken winged angels. Then, their faces hit the ground, and they were killed on the spot. Kakik! Zhen Dejuan walked out from the dark with a few formation flags in his hand. He laughed strangely and said, "Isn't that great? Isn't that great?" No wonder the core of the sect of all times did not give him a chance to shine. It turned out that they had been hiding in the dark to secretly set up the thunder array. The power of the thunder array's explosion shocked several Wusheng from the Demon Emperor's Gate who were fighting. What kind of power was this? Why did the aura produced at the moment of the explosion make them feel small? TSK. Looking at the large area of space collapse in the explosion area, Jun Changshao said in surprise, "I didn't expect that placing the power of thunder punishment from the upper realm in the thunder array would cause such a terrifying lethality." Arya had been training the power of thunder punishment in the pagoda and finally tamed it into an obedient baby. The power of thunder punishment was different from Shi Jingshuan's special attribute. After purification, it could be integrated into the martial artist's body again, so Jun Changshao had been thinking about how to use it. Later, he thought that since it was a thunder attribute, it might be better to place it in the thunder array as the eye of the array. This idea was supported by Zhen Dejuan, and he began to research it with Shengguan Xinyao. They successfully created a brand new thunder explosion array with the power of thunder punishment as the eye of the array. Today was the first time it was used outside. Judging from the fact that several half-saints were killed in the explosion, its power was definitely beyond imagination. This was also because the power of thunder punishment had lost its original violent nature under Arya's training. Otherwise, with the power that bombarded Jun Changshao, even a little bit of it could be used as the eye of the array to kill Wuxing powerhouses. Chapter 952. The sudden explosion of the new lightning array shocked Wuxing of the Demon Emperor's Gate. As for the half-sages who were planning to launch a large-scale attack, they stood in mid-air in shock. Retreat! At this moment, Jiang Lingshan shouted angrily. The top forces of the sect of all times were too strong. Now that there was a lightning array that could appear and disappear mysteriously, he immediately gave in. Swoosh! 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 The martial artists of the Demon Emperor's Gate flew back to the sect without looking back. They didn't have any confidence in fighting these monsters that made their scalps explode. Since ancient times, demon cultivators had always been deeply feared by the world. Now, the disciples of the sect of all times were torturing them. Retreat? Jun Changshao said coldly, not a chance. Swoosh! He raised the jade dragon asks the heavens soared high and shouted coldly, babies, summon your swords for me. Swoosh! Swoosh! Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others frantically communicated with their spatial rings. Then, they summoned all the ordinary swords and threw them at their feet. Jiang Lingshan was stunned. The disciples of the sect of all times suddenly took out so many swords. What was the meaning of this? Huff huff at this moment, a powerful sword aura appeared around Jun Changshao and instantly spread to the surroundings. He shouted, "Come!" Buzz! Buzz! The swords scattered on the ground began to tremble under the influence of the sword aura. Then, they flew up uncontrollably and gathered above Jun Changshao like 100 birds paying homage to the phoenix. At that moment, Jiang Lingshan understood. So many swords, all of them props. He had to ask his disciples to prepare props to perform sword moves. This was too much. Jiang Lingshan didn't have time to complain in his heart because nearly 1,000 swords gathered together. Under the sword aura, they seemed to have turned into an extremely sharp mountain peak and stood erect in midair. Huff huff. A powerful sword will spread out, cutting the surrounding space apart. An unprecedented pressure filled the air, causing the Demon Emperor's Gate disciples who were fleeing back to the sect to be incomparably terrified. An intense uneasiness arose in their hearts, as if foreboding that they might die in the next second. Earth-rank warriors of the Eastern Haozhou set up an ambush in the forest. Jun Changshao said coldly, "This is the second debt. Let's settle it now." Shua. Jade Dragon asks the heaven's sword tilted downwards, and the giant sword that had gathered in the air suddenly descended slowly like a mountain peak. The area that it covered just happened to be the group of escaping devil cultivators, as well as the Demon Emperor's Gate. Hoo hoo. Hoo hoo hoo. The violent sword momentum erupted as the giant sword pressed down, and the space was immediately torn into strips. Jun Changshao, who had executed the 10,000 swords, returned to origin and was suspended in mid-air, was augmented by the powerful sword aura. He was like an inviolable god. Jiang Lingshan's eyes were filled with terror. This kid's strength was clearly only at the level of a half-saint. Why was he able to execute a sword move that made him feel uneasy? Jun Patriarch. At this moment, Yuan Gongzi, who had yet to recover from his injuries, walked out from the inner courtyard with a pale face. He shouted in a panic, "My Demon Emperor's Gate has offended you previously. I am willing to compensate you with natural spirit stones. Please have mercy on me." Hearing the words natural spirit stones, Jun Changshao's ears immediately perked up. Is this Yuan Gongzi's intention, or the Demon Emperor's Gate's intention? I am the Deputy Gate Master of the Demon Emperor's Gate. My words naturally represent the Demon Emperor's Gate. Yuan Gongzi hurriedly said. He was very worried that the other party would cut down the sword. Because just the terrifying sword might alone would not only cause heavy casualties to the sect, but the sect that had existed for thousands of years would also be reduced to nothingness. Coward. He had to, as soon as possible. He could not hesitate for even a moment. Yuan Gongzi had enough understanding of Jun Changshao. He also knew that the sect of all times had risen very quickly and definitely needed a large amount of martial arts resources. If he showed enough sincerity, he should be able to turn hostility into friendship. How much? Go Xing raised the jade dragon, asks the heaven's sword. The huge sword that was originally slanted became perfectly straight once again. The Demon Emperor's Gate disciples who were enveloped in the sword seemed to have been freed from hell. They were still in shock and took deep breaths. Yuan Gongzi thought for a moment and said, 1 million. 1 million natural spirit stones was already very good. However, Jun Changshao coldly said, your Demon Emperor sect has been causing trouble for my sect of all times every few days. You only took out 1 million. Are you trying to dismiss a beggar? Yuan Gongzi said, 200, Jun Changshao impatiently interrupted, don't take out 2 million. Take out 10 million natural spirit stones as compensation and I will immediately put away my sword and leave the Dusk Crow Mountain range. 10 million. Jiang Lingshan could not help but roar, do you think our Demon Emperor's Gate is a mining company? Is that not the case? Jun Changshao said. As an expert on Wuxing's level, Jiang Lingshan almost lost control of his emotions and cursed on the spot. City Lord Han, old brother, I once understood your pain. Jun Patriarch. Yuan Gongzi's expression was ugly. 10 million natural spirit stones. My demon emperor's gate cannot take it out. Whoosh! The huge sword slanted down again. The demon emperor's gate disciples who had already escaped to the entrance were about to cry. The aura of death had once again emerged in their hearts, and it was even stronger than before. At this time, they finally understood. Their lives were completely in the hands of the other party. Whether they could survive or not depended on whether the vice sect master was willing to pay. Yuan Gongzi. Jun Changshao said indifferently, seeing that we are old friends, I will give you a chance to negotiate. You must cherish it. Yuan Gongzi's mouth twitched violently. After thinking for a while, he said with difficulty, I can only take out 5 million natural spirit stones. If Jun Patriarch thinks it is too little, my demon emperor's gate is willing to replace it with other martial arts resources. Yuan Gongzi. Jiang Lingshan shouted, if we give him all the natural spirit stones, what will our sect use to cultivate? It would have been better if he did not speak. The moment he spoke, Yuan Gongzi almost fainted from anger. You old fogies did not ask for my opinion and offended the sect of all times without permission. Now that they have come knocking on our door, you still have the face to speak here. Humph. An elder said decisively, at worst, we will fight to the death with him. Our demon emperor's gate has inherited the will of the demon emperor. Why would we be afraid of death? Inherited the will of the demon emperor? Jun Changshao sneered and said, girl, come out and take a look at this shameless group. Swoosh. Yao Menjing, dressed in a black robe, walked out from behind. Then, she raised her head slightly. Her eyes flashed with a strange luster, and she said in a cold voice, a group of traitors who fled when the demon emperor's gate was in danger. What qualifications do you have to inherit the will of the demon emperor? Whoosh! Whoosh! The hidden cultivation technique was no longer suppressed. Pure demonic energy spread out and shrouded the area that was already in a sorry state. Yao Menjing's eyes gradually turned from strange to crimson red. Strange marks appeared on the surface of her eyes. She seemed to have turned from a cute loli into a dark state. Plop! Plop! The demonic cultivators who had retreated to the front of the gate suddenly knelt down uncontrollably under the influence of the pure demonic energy. This is... Jiang Lingshan and the others saw Yao Menjing's eyes gradually turn red and special marks appear on her eyes. Their hands trembled violently as they said, Demon. Demon Emperor's eyes. Yuan Gongzi, who was standing in the outer courtyard, was dumbfounded at this moment. He knew that the sect of all times had disciples with innate demonic bodies, but he never thought that they would awaken the Demon Emperor's eyes. This meant that the little girl in front of him not only had the Demon Emperor's physique, but also had the qualifications to inherit the next patriarch of the Demon Emperor sect. Plop! Under the influence of the pure demonic energy, Yuan Gongzi could no longer control his body and knelt on the ground. Then, his expression changed from dull to ecstatic as he said, Lord Demon Emperor, has awakened. Lord Demon Emperor has awakened. P.S. I'm going out today and will be back tomorrow afternoon. This chapter was originally planned to be posted tomorrow, but forget it, I'll throw it out together. Tomorrow's update will be delayed to the afternoon or evening. Chapter 953. The war between the righteous and demonic paths ended with the fall of the Demon Emperor and the collapse of the Demon Emperor sect. However, the righteous sects did not expect that before the Demon Emperor sect fell apart, there was an elder who realized that the situation had changed. He first took his disciples to leave and hid in the dark. This person was called Luo Kang, one of the 8 great elders of the Demon Emperor sect. Not only did Luo Kang lead his people to leave the Demon Emperor sect, but he also took away many martial arts secret manuals and demon sect documents. He also founded the Demon Emperor's Gate. This person had been hiding in the dark his entire life, working hard to develop and strengthen his sect, all so that one day, he could inherit the will of the demon emperor and contend with the righteous sects to the end. However, because the demon emperor's sect defected when it was on the brink of destruction, he was never accepted by the orthodox demon cultivators. He was even labeled as the scum of the demon Dao. Luo Kang didn't care what others thought of him and continued to lurk in the dark. Even when he clearly knew that many of his companions from the Devil Path sect were being encircled and annihilated by the famous righteous sects one by one, he didn't have any intention of helping them. It was this strategy of hiding in the dark and not being moved by others that allowed the Demon Emperor's Gate to live in the Starfall continent safely and gain the strength it had today. Unfortunately, Luo Kang was unable to pry into a higher realm of martial arts and was unable to escape the laws of heaven and earth, turning into a pile of withered bones. At the end of his lifespan, he once said to his disciples, "Lord Demon Monarch is not dead, he is just sleeping in the abyss." If one day, someone inherits the innate demon body and possesses the Demon Monarch's eye, it means that Lord Demon Monarch has awakened from the abyss. All of you must follow him and create a brand new era. These words became his last words, and also became the teachings of the Demon Emperor's Gate. The new disciples who joined the Demon Emperor's Gate not only had to engrave it in their hearts, they also had to treat the Demon Emperor as the Demon Emperor's Gate. In that case, what was the Demon Emperor's eye? According to the ancient records of the Demon Emperor's Gate, after the Demon Emperor was born, there would be a special mark in his eyes, which was regarded as the symbol of the demon sect's master. Today, thousands of years after Luo Canghai's death, the Demon Emperor's Gate had been paying attention to the innate demon body and the eye of the Demon Emperor. But in the end, there were no clues, and some of the higher-ups began to have doubts. It had been nearly 10,000 years since the fall of the Demon Emperor. Although there had been innate demon bodies, none of them had the eye of the Demon Emperor. Perhaps the previous sect master had deliberately left it behind so that everyone could firmly believe in the Demon Emperor. But when Yao Menjing appeared in front of the mountain gate, a pure innate demonic qi erupted from her body, and a special mark appeared in her eyes. The demonic cultivators of the Demon Monarch sect immediately realized that Sovereign Luo was right. The disciples of the Devil Monarch's Gate in the inner yard all knelt on the ground, their bodies in a kowtow position, their souls and blood trembling violently. Shua. Led by Jiang Lingshen, the 8 martial saints landed in front of the mountain gate. Although their cultivation bases were high enough to ignore Yao Menjing's innate demonic qi, their bodies were still trembling slightly, and their eyes were filled with awe and fear. And Jun Changshao was a little surprised. He didn't expect Yao Menjing to shock the higher-ups of the Demon Emperor's Gate. If he knew this would happen, he wouldn't have wasted so much effort to fight her. He could have just let her walk out. What a mistake, what a mistake. Elder Jiang. Yuan Gongzi whispered, "What are you waiting for? Kneel and greet the Lord." Humph, Jiang Lingshen sneered, "Although this girl has the mark in her eyes, it's still unknown whether or not she has the Demon Emperor's eye. Yuan Gongzi is kneeling just like that, isn't it a little too careless?" If it weren't for Jun Changshao and the sect of all time's disciples, he and the higher-ups might have believed Yao Menjing's words. But now, who knew if she was a fake? Yuan Gongzi said, "Such a pure innate demon qi, isn't it enough to prove that she has inherited Lord Demon Emperor's will?" This. Jiang Lingshen was silent. Whether or not the Demon Emperor's eye was real, he and the higher-ups couldn't be sure. Demon qi that was purer than his was impossible to fake. Yuan Gongzi. Jun Changshao said calmly, "Whether you kneel or not is your business. 5 million spiritual stones, not one less." The current situation was a little unexpected and he couldn't understand it. But since he was here to settle the score, he had to get the money first. "Don't worry," Yuan Gongzi said seriously, "the Demon Emperor's Gate won't go back on our words. Then hurry up and take it out. I'm waiting to go home and take a bath." Jun Changshao said. Yuan Gongzi said with difficulty, "Wait a moment." Then, he looked at Jiang Lingshen and the others and said, "Everyone, don't just stand there." He was injured and couldn't move. Otherwise, he would have already gone to prepare the spiritual stones for Go Sheng. If we give him 5 million spiritual stones, what will the disciples use to cultivate? An elder of the Demon Emperor's Gate complained. Yuan Gongzi was so angry that he was about to cry. The other party's mountain-like giant sword stood in front of the gate and could slash down at any time. There was also the will of the Demon Emperor. Did they not understand at all? Why did I have such a group of idiotic teammates? Patriarch. At this time, Yao Menjing said, let's not take the spiritual stones. Let's just take over the Demon Emperor's Gate. Jun Chengxiao's expression froze. This little girl's thoughts were very wild. My lord. Yuan Gongzi hurriedly said, I, Yuan Feng, am willing to follow you everywhere. Under normal circumstances, he might represent the Demon Emperor's Gate. But now, his idiotic teammates were still doubtful, so he only represented himself. Yao Menjing crossed her arms and said, the one you have to be loyal to is not me, but my patriarch. The expression on Yuan Feng's face was a bit interesting. Jiang Lingshan said with a cold face, we are only loyal to the Demon Emperor. The others are not qualified. Whoosh! At this time, the giant sword that had been hanging in the air all this time suddenly fell down, and the sword force it carried directly tore through a large area of space. Jiang Lingshan and the others were shocked and hurriedly retreated. Boom! They had escaped, but the gate that had been established for thousands of years was instantly smashed to pieces by the giant sword, and a deep sword pit that extended to the main hall appeared. Looking from a high altitude, the old gate that had a lot of history looked like it had been ruthlessly slashed by a knife. It was very eye-catching. Whoosh! Whoosh! After the bombardment, the scattered swords on the ground were pulled back and quickly gathered together. Everyone. Jun Chengxiao said proudly, am I qualified? You. Jiang Lingshan and the other elders were furious. The gate represented the face of the sect, and it was directly destroyed by that guy. It was absolutely unforgivable. Of course. Jun Chengxiao said, you have to be qualified to be loyal to me. The 5 of you can't beat a hall master of my sect, so you are not qualified to be loyal to me. The corners of Ding Xingwang and the others' mouths twitched. My Lord Patriarch, for someone as strong as Hall Master Z, only the Emperor level can defeat him in a one-on-one battle. If you want to use that as the standard, no one is qualified to be with you. Hey! Yao Menjing hooked her finger at Yuan Feng and said, being loyal to the Patriarch is being loyal to me. Come over quickly. Yuan Feng was conflicted. He definitely had no objection to being loyal to this girl. After all, he had the Khanate demonic body and the Demon Emperor's eye. However, being loyal to Jun Chengxiao was a little difficult. Girl. Jun Chengxiao said, they obviously don't treat you as the real master. There's no need to talk nonsense with them. Hurry up and give me the money. Okay. Yao Menjing shook her head and said, I gave you a chance. Since you chose to give it up, you can't blame anyone. Hurry up. She put her hands on her hips and said fiercely with her big eyes, give me the money. Chapter 954. Jun Chengxiao was quite tempted when Yao Menjing said that she wanted to incorporate the Demon Emperor's Gate. However, judging from Yuan Feng's hesitation and the attitude of Jiang Lingshan and the others, they didn't seem to have any intention of being loyal to him. Since that was the case, he couldn't force them. So, he continued with the plan and let them transfer the money to his card. Under the little lowly Yao Menjing's fierce threat, Yuan Gongzi endured his injuries and personally went to withdraw the money. He couldn't count on useless teammates. He just hoped that they wouldn't cause any more trouble and quickly send this plague away. Not bad. In the sky above the damaged gate, Jun Chengxiao counted a few large spatial rings and said with satisfaction, 5 million each. Xiao! Xiao! The sword aura weakened and the sword fell down. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others kept the items, leaving them for the patriarch to use the next time he acted cool. Who? Yuan Gongzi let out a long sigh. But feeling the innate demonic aura released by Yao Menjing, he still knelt on the ground with lingering fear. Jiang Lingshen and the others could only watch helplessly. Jun Changshao kept the spatial rings with spirit stones, not daring to argue with him. Their sect was found, and they couldn't beat them in terms of strength. They were completely passive. If they could spend some money to settle this matter, they should thank the heavens. Yuan Gongzi. Jun Changshao said, ores, crystal cores, and herbs. Preparing, please wait a moment. Yuan Feng hurriedly said, fearing that this guy would gather the giant sword again. Oh right. Jun Changshao said, it's best if you have some demonic secret manuals. Not long after, the disciples of the Demon Emperor's Gate brought a lot of spatial rings. There were all kinds of martial arts stored in them, and there were dozens of demonic martial arts manuals. Yuan Gongzi. Jun Changshao kept all the items and smiled, happy cooperation. Yuan Feng understood that these words were purposely said to let Jiang Lingshen's imagination run wild. Calling him a friend in front of all the heroes of the world at Reflection Mountain was also a debt. Based on Jun Changxiao's personality, he would definitely return the favor. Are you really not loyal to my patriarch? Yao Menjing asked. Yuan Gongzi's gaze was resolute as he said, devil cultivators are only loyal to the devil emperor, and never to anyone else. Stubborn. Yao Menjing gave up. Actually, the reason why she asked the patriarch to take in the Demon Emperor's Gate was not because she had the Demon Emperor's inheritance, but because she could have a demonic cultivator as her companion. After all, in the sect of all times, only she and Mo Shang were demonic cultivators, and the latter could only be considered half a demonic cultivator. Everyone. Jun Changshao said indifferently, I'm not a calculative person. Since you've paid the compensation, the grudges between us will vanish like smoke. Yuan Gongzi and Jiang Lingshen's hearts were dripping blood. Although most of these natural spirit stones and various martial resources were plundered from the righteous sects, giving them all to him in exchange for settling their grudges was still a bit too high a price to pay. It was a bit hard to accept. Of course. Jun Changshao said again, I hope there won't be a next time, or else. He looked at the inner courtyard of the Demon Emperor's Gate, his eyes filled with killing intent. The Demon Emperor's Gate will really cease to exist. He was casually threatening the righteous sects that gave the righteous sects a headache. Jun Patriarch, please don't worry. My Demon Emperor's Gate only targets the righteous sects. We definitely won't provoke your esteemed sect. Yuan Feng said. Jun Changshao said, Yuan Gongzi, there are some things that only you and I know. If any news leaks out, I'll still pay you a visit. Yuan Feng knew that the matter he was talking about was definitely related to Yao Menjing, so he hurriedly transmitted his voice, Jun Patriarch, our Lord is our faith. Naturally, we won't spread this matter and bring harm to her. That's good. Jun Changshao cupped his hands and said, I won't disturb you. I'll take my leave first. After that, he left with his disciples. In fact, he didn't care about the fact that Yao Menjing had the innate demonic body. It didn't matter even if it was spread out. After all, he already had the strength to contend with the top sects. However, he still had to develop the sect in a low-key manner. It was better to have less trouble. Watching Jun Changshao and his disciples gradually disappear into the forest, Jiang Lingshen and the other elders finally showed their anger. Yuan Gongzi. An elder said coldly, if the sect master knows about this, he'll definitely be disappointed in you. Fuck. You still have the face to say that. If you didn't act on your own initiative to target the sect of all times, would the sect have suffered such a disaster? Yuan Feng said firmly, the sect master will definitely understand me. Jiang Lingshen said with a sullen face, this old man is very suspicious now. Did you leak information to Jun Changshao so that he could easily find us? Bullshit. Yuan Gongzi finally couldn't hold back and roared, I, Yuan Feng, will always be loyal to the Demon Emperor and the Demon Emperor's gate. I will never do anything to betray the sect. This obviously couldn't convince the upper echelons of the Demon Emperor's gate. They looked at him with a bit of caution. Everyone. An elder said, the sect's stronghold has been exposed. Our top priority is to think about how to hide it better. Otherwise, that guy will come every few days and rob us. Wouldn't that be a waste of money? Not to mention, Jun Gosheng really had such a plan. He didn't make things difficult for the Demon Emperor's gate too much. It wasn't because of the martial arts resources, but because he wanted to let them continue to fight with the righteous sects while he reaped the benefits. He definitely couldn't let Jun Gosheng rob the righteous sections. After all, it would be easy to become the public enemy of the continent. However, if the demon sect robbed them, he wouldn't have any psychological burden if he went to rob the demon sect. Sorry. It's the demon sect who robbed you. It has nothing to do with Jun. Jiang Lingshan said, Jun Changshao definitely has some special method to find this place. We need to move to a more dangerous and complicated forbidden area. If the forbidden area of the Starfall continent had human thoughts, they would definitely curse, fuck you, don't drag us down. Patriarch. On the way back to the sect of all times, Old Ding said, those martial cultivators of the demon sect seem to be very afraid of the Yao girl. Why don't they take this opportunity to take her for their own use? Jun Changshao shook his head and said, except for Yuan Gongzi and some disciples, several higher-ups of Wu Sheng's level don't approve. If they force it, I'm afraid it will be counterproductive. The Purple King said lightly, if they don't accept it, then destroy them. Jun Changshao said, if the Demon Emperor's gate could be destroyed so easily, it wouldn't have existed for thousands of years. Although in the battle just now, their top forces were stronger than the other side, who knew if the demon sect had any backup plans. Not to mention, there was still a sect master who hadn't shown up. Who knew how high his cultivation was? Since there were uncertain factors, making the Demon Emperor's gate willingly pay a loss was definitely the best result. Otherwise, if they were forced into a corner and destroyed jade and common stone, the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. Jun Changshao shrugged and said, since I found them once, I will find them again and again. As long as they are still in the Starfall continent, even if they hide to the ends of the earth, they won't be able to escape from my hands. He wasn't bragging. He really had the ability. Because even if he didn't learn about the Dusky Raven Mountain range from Ghost and the others, Jiang Ye could inquire about it. When his cultivation was stronger and his understanding of the primordial spirit deepened, not to mention finding a sect in the Starfall continent, even finding a needle would be as easy as flipping his hand. Now, Jun Changshao said to himself, just wait and watch the show. He looked back at Yao Menjing, whose eyes had returned to normal, and said to himself, girl, I didn't forcibly take in the demon cultivators of the Demon Emperor's gate. I plan to leave them to you. When you have enough strength in the future, go and subdue them openly and become the sect master of the demon sect. Sect of all times. After Jun Changshao returned, he placed all 5 million natural spirit stones in the item machine and set the contribution points for the disciples to buy them. As for the matter of visiting the Demon Emperor's gate in the Dusky Raven Mountain range, no one in the outside world talked about it. The various sects were still actively searching for the hiding place of the demon sect. Elder Jiang. After returning, Li Qingyang found Jiang Ye and said, is there any news of her? Found her, Jiang Ye said. Li Qingyang was overjoyed. But, Jiang Ye said, this girl lives alone in a remote village. It's very difficult. Where does she live? Little Han village in Lu Prefecture in the northeast. Li Qingyang was silent. He was in Yangzhou in the southwest, and she was in Lu Prefecture in the northeast. Was she deliberately hiding as far away as possible so that he wouldn't find her? Patriarch. Li Qingyang walked in from outside the hall and said, "This disciple wants to go out for a few days." "You've decided?" Jun Changshao said, "Are you going to look for her?" "This disciple just wants to take a look at her from afar," Li Qingyang said. "Let elder's son accompany you. After all, he's from Lu Prefecture in the northeast and is familiar with the area there," Jun Changshao said. It wasn't hard to see that this guy had definitely eavesdropped on the conversation between Li Qingyang and Jiang Ye. Yes. On the same day, Li Qingyang and Gong Sun Haohai left the Sect of All Times and headed toward Lu Prefecture in the northeast. Gong Sun Haohai was a bit excited. After all, he had been trapped in the Sect of All Times to sweep the floor, and now he had become an elder. He hadn't returned to his hometown for many years. Jun Changshao didn't stay idle either. After distributing all the resources he had obtained from the Demon Emperor's Gate, he entered the planar battlefield and took out his treasure detector, continuing to search for opportunities to expand the stronghold's area. As for the Sect of All Times disciples, they were actively doing Sect missions. Their Sect's achievement value continued to increase, and they were getting closer and closer to reaching the maximum. Chapter 955. All the warriors on the battlefield were crying because Jun Gosheng had returned after settling his family's matters. This time, in order to expand the area of his stronghold, he started to search for fortuitous opportunities. Weapons, martial techniques, equipment, treasures, herbs, ores, as long as they appeared on the treasure detector and were locked on by him, they would not be able to escape. The result of this kind of crazy search was that many planes had painstakingly confirmed the opportunities and went through untold hardships to find them, but in the end, all that was left was an empty box that had been licked. "It's gone. Someone beat us to it. Who is it?" Every once in a while, one would hear the heart-wrenching cries of warriors at certain places of fortuitous opportunities. Their cries were filled with anger and sorrow. Many warriors who entered the plains were here for fortuitous opportunities. Some had been searching for years, but in the end, someone else beat them to it. This was undoubtedly a heavy blow. Although this sacred sky-heart grass is not mature yet, it can be hastened by the incubator. This meteorite spirit stone weighs 500 kilograms. If there is a professional blacksmith, it can be used to forge many good weapons and equipment. As for the spirit energy bull martial technique, I can let Sinner, Yuhua, and the others cultivate it. Jun Changshao, who was sitting in the main hall, was carefully sifting through and distributing the various fortuitous opportunities he had found recently. He was even dissatisfied with some of them, thinking that they had no practical use. Warriors from the plains would be wild with joy when they found a fortuitous opportunity. This guy was starting to dislike it. It was infuriating to compare himself to a real person. After finding so many fortuitous opportunities, the Falling Star Continent's stronghold had expanded by a lot. It was now expanding from the size of a village to a town. According to the rules of the battlefield, if a newly entered plane could expand the stronghold to the size of a town within 5 years, it was equivalent to completing the mission and gaining the right to enter and exit freely. However, before the warriors representing the Falling Star Continent could enter and were still in fear, their own stronghold's mission was almost completed. This was probably unprecedented. Swish! The terrain remodeling device flew out and landed on the ground. Buzz! 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 From night to dawn, the Falling Star Continent's stronghold shook frequently. A huge mountain rose from the ground just like that. Boom! The next day, Xiao Ziji held a huge mountain in his hands. Jun Changshao quickly set up the 5 elements great formation below, supporting it in midair. At this moment, there were already 5 tall mountains floating in the Falling Star Continent's stronghold. Oh my God! Another mountain has risen. How did the Falling Star Continent do it? Several hundred miles away, cultivators occasionally passed by and saw another mountain floating in the air at the end of their vision, intersecting with other mountains, creating a spectacular scene of mountains floating in the air. All of them widened their eyes. When I passed by yesterday, there were clearly only 4 mountains. How did another one appear out of thin air in just one night? If he hadn't been steadfast in his cultivation of martial arts, he might have even thought that he had seen a ghost. Don't be surprised, don't be surprised. Because, this was only the beginning. In order to surpass the strongholds of those top-notch existential planes, Jun Changshao was still working hard to search for opportunities and expand his territory. Therefore, in the following period of time, numerous mountains appeared out of nowhere and then hung in midair. Falling Star Continent. In order to make up for the losses caused by Go Shing's blackmail, after the Demon Emperor's Gate moved to another forbidden area, it began to madly target the righteous sections. In a short period of time, 6 or 7 fourth-rate sects were destroyed. The top-notch sects expressed their helplessness because although they had joined forces with many other sects, they still couldn't find the hiding place of the Demon Emperor's Gate. They could only passively take a beating. Because of the frequent disturbances of the demon sect, the entire Falling Star continent was shrouded in an oppressive atmosphere. Many self-proclaimed righteous sects were in fear and trepidation, fearing that one day they would be suddenly wiped out. This atmosphere infected the northeast Lu prefecture, which stood aloof from worldly affairs, and the atmosphere was similarly oppressive. The places where the disciples of the sects often traveled or played were now rarely visited. It was as if snowflakes were fluttering and the north wind was whistling, and the world was boundless. The oppressive atmosphere could only be felt by cultivators. The ordinary people on the icy plains were still working from sunrise to sunset, living the most ordinary and difficult life. In a small, remote village. The adults who went out hunting returned with a full load, and the children happily welcomed them. Wow, what a big fish! It must be my father who caught it. Nonsense, it must be my father who caught it. The children were fighting over the fish until their faces turned red, causing the adults who had unloaded the game and were drinking to keep warm to laugh. Come, come. A burly middle-aged man in his early 40s waved his hand and said, Uncle Guo will tell you a story today. He was the captain of the village's hunting team and the only one in the village who cultivated the martial Dao. Although his strength was only at stage 12 meridian opening, he was the god of war in the hearts of the children. Uncle Guo. A 10-year-old child said, we want to hear the story of the sect of all times. I knew you brats wanted to hear this. Uncle Guo specially went to the city to ask around, Uncle Guo said with a smile. The children immediately gathered around him, wild with joy. Sister Qiao, The 10-year-old child shouted towards a simple house, Uncle Guo is going to tell the story of the sect of all times. Come and listen. Creak. The slightly dilapidated door was pushed open. A woman wearing an apron, who seemed to be busy with lunch, walked out. She was about 20 years old. Although she was dressed plainly, it could not hide her delicate and pretty appearance. Little Huzi. The woman said, Uncle Guo just came back from hunting and still needs to rest. You guys quickly go somewhere else to play and stop pestering him. It's fine, it's fine. Uncle Guo said with a smile. The woman shook her head. Girl. Uncle Guo said with a smile, I went to the city this time and asked around a lot about the sect of all times. Among them, there's even someone you dream of. Uncle Guo. Who is the person that Sister Qiao dreams of? The children asked curiously. The woman's face turned red. Uncle Guo drank a mouthful of strong liquor and said with a grin, this time, Uncle Guo will tell you the story of the sect of all times participating in the dragon and tiger battle for supremacy. The children did not know what the dragon and tiger battle for supremacy was, but as long as it was related to the sect of all times, they would be very happy to listen. The story is like this. Uncle Guo told them the news he heard from outside without missing a single word. The children were mesmerized by the story. The woman was also listening. Especially when she heard that person's name, she was overjoyed and thought to herself, he's already so strong. After feeling happy, she felt even more disappointed. He was the #1 genius of Azure Sun County and had joined the glorious sect of all times. His future was limitless. On the other hand, she was just an ordinary person and was destined not to have any interactions with him in the future. Why is Sister Chiao crying? No, no, the woman hurriedly stood up and rushed back to her room. She said, Uncle Guo must be starving. I'll go and cook now. Chapter 956. Night fell. Sister Chiao sat under the roof in a daze. Girl. Uncle Guo walked over and asked, what are you thinking about? Nothing, nothing. You've been in Little Cold Village for a few years now. I can tell that you have something on your mind. Girl, do you know the second disciple of the sect of all times? Every time you go out, you ask me to find out about him, Uncle Guo said seriously. Sister Chiao lowered her head and said, I used to know him. Uncle Guo was not surprised by this answer. He said, he's an existence that ordinary people like us can't reach. Quickly forget him and don't make things difficult for yourself. Sister Chiao said dejectedly, I came to Lu province from southwest Yangzhou to northeast Yangzhou to forget him. But even though the weather here is cold, it's hard to let go of my thoughts. Gulp. Uncle Guo drank a mouthful of strong wine and said sadly, I can understand because I also had a girl I liked when I was young. Her talent was better than mine and her realm was higher than mine. I could only look at her from afar like a fool. Sister Chiao was stunned. Uncle Guo said, after a long time, you've forgotten. After a long time, you've forgotten. Sister Chiao murmured and said, Uncle Guo, I understand. Uncle Guo got up and left. Sister Chiao sat under the roof and thought for a long time. Then, she took out a yellowed paper crane and said, Brother Qingyang, I hope you become an indomitable expert. Whoosh! A gust of wind blew. The paper crane flew out of her hand and into the sky. Sister Chiao looked up and watched it gradually disappear into the night. She said with heartache, from today onwards, I'll cut off all thoughts. Outside the village. The paper crane floated down. Li Qingyang caught it with his palm and said dejectedly, did she want to tear it up? Yes. Gong Sun Haohai said. Li Qingyang kept the paper crane in his spatial ring and turned around. Let's go. Go. Gong Sun Haohai was stunned. He could tell that Li Qingyang had been secretly paying attention to the girl called Sister Chiao. The two of them definitely had an unusual relationship. Now that he had finally rushed over from Yangzhou in the southwest, was he in a hurry to leave without going out to meet him? Are you really leaving? Yes. All right. Swoosh. Whoosh. The two of them disappeared outside the village. Sister Chiao, who had already returned to her room, seemed to have sensed something. She subconsciously looked at the spot outside the village where Li Qingyang had been standing and muttered, something left. Was it a stray cat? Ta! Step! Ta! Suddenly, the sound of horse hooves rang out in the night, breaking the tranquility of the Little Cold Village and waking up Uncle Guo and the others who were sound asleep. Not good. The bandits are here. Chaotic noises resounded in the air. Suddenly, a group of ferocious-looking men in black riding on tall horses rushed out of the village. They were the bandits that roamed Luzhou in the northeast all year round. Because the famous righteous sects had been hiding in their sects and didn't dare to come out easily, they began to commit crimes unscrupulously. Uncle Guo rushed out of the house with a long spear. As the only martial cultivator in the Little Han village, he was also the security captain responsible for the safety of the entire village. Fuck you. The bandit leader got off his horse and sent Uncle Guo flying with a kick. Then, he ordered his subordinates to search for valuables and food. Uncle Guo. When Sister Chiao saw Uncle Guo vomiting blood and lying on the ground, she hurriedly ran out of her room. The bandit leader said in surprise, "There's actually a pretty girl in this remote village? Men, capture her and bring her back to the mountain to be my wife." Yes. A few ferocious bandits rushed over with swords and sabers. Girl. Uncle Guo struggled to stand up and pushed Sister Qiao, to the back. With a ferocious expression, he said, "Run." "You can't run." One of the bandits chased after him. Whoosh. Uncle Guo poured a thin amount of spirit energy into his long spear and swung it. However, the other party easily dodged it and stabbed him with his sword. Slash. The cold sword pierced through his chest, and blood splattered on the snowy ground. Uncle Guo. Sister Qiao, who had steadied herself, saw that Uncle Guo had been pierced by a sharp sword. Her beautiful face turned pale as she cried out involuntarily. Coincidentally, the villagers were also chased out. When they saw that the only martial cultivator in the village was heavily injured, despair rose in their hearts. What a hindrance! The bandit drew his sword and kicked Uncle Guo away. Then, he walked toward Sister Qiao, Bang! A stone flew past and hit his head. The 10-year-old child picked up a small stone and held it in his hand. He glared at the bandit and said, "Don't hurt Sister Qiao, The bandit turned around and walked over with his blood-stained sword. He grabbed the child and raised him up high. With a murderous aura, he said, "Little brat, you're courting death." Although the child was restrained, he was not afraid in the face of danger and shouted, "Sister Qiao, run. Run." The bandit leader snorted coldly and said, "It's useless for a woman that I like to run to the ends of the earth." At this moment, the other bandits had already approached Sister Qiao, Don't come over." Sister Qiao, panicked and retreated step by step until she reached the corner of the wall. There was no way out. Boss. The second bandit leader led his men out of the villagers' room and cursed, "This village is so fucking poor. There isn't even anything valuable, let alone banknotes. Same old rules." The bandit leader ordered, "Burn it all." What about these people? Take the woman and child away. Kill the rest. All right. The second bandit leader waved his hands hurriedly. The bandits threw out the torches in their hands and walked toward the trembling villagers with their swords. Whoosh! A strong gust of wind blew. The torches that were about to touch the houses were extinguished. The bandits who were about to attack looked in the direction of the wind and suddenly saw a sword flash before their eyes. Pft! Pft! Blood splattered and heads flew everywhere. When the bandit leader and the second bandit leader saw this, their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. The bandits who were about to capture Sister Qiao, froze on the spot. An invisible pressure made them unable to move. They could not move, but their minds could. A strong aura of death instantly filled their hearts. Although these bandits were weak in cultivation, their intuition was very accurate. A sharp sword suddenly appeared and slashed across their necks, mercilessly reaping their lives. This scene happened very quickly. When the trembling villagers gradually calmed down, they realized that more than 10 bandits around them were beheaded. Blood dyed the snow red. The scene was very frightening. The children were so frightened that they did not dare to look. Sister Qiao, who was still in shock, tried her best to raise her head. She saw a man in a red cloak standing in front of her. The sword in his hand was stained with blood, dripping from the tip of the sword to the ground. Although his back was facing her and she could not see his face clearly, she felt very familiar. She could not help but call out, "Brother Qingyang." The person who suddenly appeared did not say anything. He walked step by step toward the bandit leader who was restrained by the pressure. Then, he placed his sword on the bandit leader's neck and said coldly, "You can forgive a natural disaster, but you can't survive a self-inflicted disaster." This voice, it's him. It's really him. Sister Chiao, covered her mouth as tears fell like rain. Hero, don't. Pft. The sword flashed, and the bandit leader's head flew off. Then, it fell to the snow. His face was forever frozen in fear. The second bandit leader who was restrained saw his boss die just like that. The fear in his eyes intensified. Then, after the sword slashed across his body, his head separated from his body and he went to collect his lunchbox. All the bandits were killed. The crisis of the little cold village was resolved. The man in the battle robe cleaned the bloodstains on his sword and elegantly sheathed it. He was about to leave, but Sister Chiao, struggled to stand up and said, "Brother Qingyang, is that you?" Chapter 957. It was daybreak. The frightened villagers were cleaning up the corpses of the bandits and cleaning up the red snow. What happened last night was unforgettable, especially when the man in the battle robe suddenly appeared and killed so many bandits. The child called Little Huzi stood at the window and tried his best to look inside, but his mother pulled him away by the ear. Uncle Gua, who was originally injured, was squatting at the door and drinking strong wine. It was strange. Yesterday, he thought that he was going to die, but after taking a pill, his body quickly recovered and he was completely fine now. In the room, Sister Chiao, stood there, not knowing what to do. In front of her, the man in the battle robe had already taken off his mask. It was Li Qingyang. He had returned after leaving Little Cold Village. To be exact, he could not let go of his beloved Brother Qingyang. Sister Chiao, said, "Why are you in Lu province in the northeast?" Li Qingyang turned around and looked at her. "I should be the one asking you that." Sister Chiao, did not dare to look at him. She lowered her head and stammered, I came to seek refuge with a distant relative." The lie was too lame. Li Qingyang walked forward and put his hands on her shoulders. He said in a serious tone, "Come back to Yangzhou in the southwest with me. Come back to the Sect of all times with me." After the bandit attack, he realized that it was too dangerous for a weak girl to live outside. The patriarch would definitely not refuse to bring her back to the sect. Sister Chiao, kept her head down. "I don't want to be a burden to you." She was the same as Pei Aniu's fiancé. They were both ordinary people with no talent and aptitude. If they had not met by chance at the Lotus Pond Lake, they would never have crossed paths. In fact, Sister Chiao, did not know Li Qingyang's identity at first. After she found out that he was a direct descendant of the Li family in Qingyang City and a martial arts genius, she felt inferior. She decided to leave him because on the eve of the 100 Sect Alliance's recruitment, Patriarch Li came looking for her and placed 10,000 taels of silver in front of her. He said, "Take this money and leave Yangzhou in the southwest. Don't bother my son again." Sister Chiao, did not accept the money that was enough for her to live comfortably. She simply packed her luggage and left a letter. In order to hide further and never meet again. She came to Lu Prefecture in the northeast, which was the furthest from Yangzhou in the southwest. For a girl without any martial arts to travel such a long distance to the other side of the continent, there was no need to mention the difficulties and dangers involved. If the Sect of all times did not become famous later on, and if Li Qingyang's name did not appear in her ears again, Sister Chiao, would not have asked Uncle Gua to deliberately inquire about it. She did not want to pester Li Qingyang. She had done it. However, it was impossible for her to forget him forever. Sister Chiao, did not wish to accompany the person she loved forever. She only wished to hide in a corner and silently watch over him. Uncle Gua saw this clearly, which was why he advised her to learn to forget last night and face the future with a better attitude. Sister Chiao, also realized that she was paying more and more attention to Li Qingyang, so she had the thought of tearing up the paper crane that she had kept until now. The paper crane was given to him by Li Qingyang. Although it was very cliché, it was similar to a token of love. Sister Chiao had chosen to tear it apart, which meant that she had to sever everything and learn to forget him. This kind of relationship problem between a man and a woman was really complicated and troublesome. Therefore, June Patriarch was smarter and always focused his energy on the sect. Otherwise, if he wrote a few chapters because of emotional matters, the readers would say that it was useless. I'm already Wu Huang now, how are you going to drag me down? Li Qingyang said. These words were said very casually, but when Uncle Guo heard it, he spat out a mouthful of wine on the spot and said in shock, Wu Huang. My God. After following Jun Gosheng for a long time, Chief Steward Li had also changed. He had become a silent pretentious person. You're Wu Huang now. Sister Chiao said with her eyes wide open. Although she had never practiced martial arts, she had more or less heard of the continent's cultivation system. Not to mention Wu Huang's level, even a martial master was in existence that she could only look up to. I know. Father went to look for you before, but he won't object to us being together now, so. Li Qingyang hugged Sister Chiao and said, come back to the sect of all times with me. If you feel that you're not worthy of me, I'll ask Patriarch to let you have the qualifications and cultivation that are worthy of me. This was not a problem at all. As long as Jun Changshao was willing, he could turn an ordinary person into a genius in minutes. As the first disciple to enter the Lingyan Pavilion, if Li Qingyang really came to ask, Go Sheng would definitely not refuse. Brother Qingyang. Sister Chiao looked up and said, you said that you want to become an indomitable expert. Although Wu Huang is very powerful, he's not the best. He still needs to work harder. Li Qingyang's expression changed slightly. He understood the meaning of this girl's words. Creak. The door opened, and Li Qingyang walked out. He left the little cold village without looking back. Sister Chiao sat in the room, holding the paper crane that had already flown away. Tears flowed down her cheeks. Uncle Guo walked in and squatted at the door. He cares about you a lot. Why did you refuse? If he followed me to the sect of all times, would Brother Qingyang still have the heart to cultivate? Sister Chiao choked with sobs. Sigh. Uncle Guo shook his head and said, Girl, you're thinking too much for others. In the end, you'll only hurt yourself. Uncle Guo, who's that big brother? What big brother? He's clearly an immortal who can go to heaven and earth. Yes, an immortal. The group of brats said with admiration. Although the bandits' attack had traumatized them a little. However, Li Qingyang's appearance and his powerful killing of the bad guys had shocked them even more. It was the first time they knew that there was such a powerful martial artist in the world. Little guys. Uncle Guo took a sip of wine and said, his name is Li Qingyang. He's the second disciple of the sect of all times. Ah. He's Li Qingyang. Oh my God, no wonder he's so powerful. Uncle Guo, how does a disciple of the sect of all times know Sister Chiao? Uncle Guo thought for a moment and said in a meaningful tone, they're friends, very good friends. Extreme Cold Palace. The palace master and disciples stood in front of the mountain gate excitedly. Li Qingyang leaned against a tree outside, ignoring everyone's welcome. He was still thinking about something. He thought to himself, if you're afraid of delaying my cultivation, I'll come and find you when I don't need to cultivate. How could he not cultivate? Break through Wusheng and become a martial emperor. Grand Elder. The Extreme Cold Palace Master said, you're finally back. Gongsun Haohai was also a little moved. However, he suppressed his slightly agitated state of mind and said, I'm just here to take a look. I have to return to the sect of all times as soon as possible. Grand Elder. The Extreme Cold Palace Master looked at Li Qingyang, who seemed to have a lot on his mind, and said in a low voice, young friend, you seem to have something on your mind? I'm troubled by love. Gongsun Haohai shook his head. He did not stay in the Extreme Cold Palace for too long. Then, he left with Li Qingyang and set off for the Sect of all times. However, before he left, he instructed the palace master to do something. The little cold village returned to its usual peace. The villagers worked at sunrise and rested at sunset as usual. However, a few days later, an elder and dozens of disciples of the extreme cold palace suddenly rushed over and announced that they would be guarding the village all year round. The little cold village was located in a remote area, and its territory belonged to a seventh-rate sect. Therefore, when a fourth-rate sect sent people over, it immediately alarmed the entire sect. A sect master personally led the higher-ups and rushed over. Sect Master Sunday, the elder of the extreme cold palace, said coldly, "You can't even deal with the bandits. My extreme cold palace will take over this place." "Yes, yes." Sect Master Sun hurriedly nodded and bowed. A fourth-rate sect actually sent experts to protect a small village. Could it be that there was an important person that he could not afford to offend living in seclusion here? Chapter 958. Patriarch. In the main hall of the Iron Bone Peak, Li Qingyang walked in and cupped his hands. "I'm back." Jun Changshao said, "It just so happens that the battlefield stronghold has expanded quite a bit during this period of time. We're waiting for you to build it." "Yes." Li Qingyang left. Hall Master Li Jun Changshao sent a voice transmission. "Inform the Northeast Lu State Branch to send someone to hide in Little Cold Village and secretly protect that girl. If anything happens, let the branch master bring his own head to the sect to apologize." He already knew about the matter between Li Qingyang and Sister Qiao, so he had to put an end to all dangers. There must not be a heart-wrenching scene where the lovers would never be together. "Okay." Li Luoqiu hurriedly communicated with the Northeast Lu State Intelligence Network. Not long after, the small village that was originally protected by the extreme coldness palace was protected by many experts who were proficient in the way of assassins. At this time, not to mention bandits, even if the fourth or fifth-rate sects sent people to cause trouble, they would definitely not return. The martial artists of the Falling Star continent would never think that a small village with only 100 people would have so many experts hidden in the dark. Its defense was not inferior to a third-rate sect at all. This was still bandits causing trouble. If the situation was more dangerous, Jun Changshao might have sent a legion of the war cavalry hall over. For the sake of his disciple. Go Sheng liked to make a big fuss over nothing. The next day, Li Qingyang brought his fellow disciples into the Falling Star continent and began to plan and build. The person he loved did not follow him back to the Sect of all times, which made him very depressed. Only by using his energy to busy himself would he temporarily forget about the unhappy things. A new round of construction began. The disciples of the Sect of all times worked in full swing. As the area was already large enough, Li Qingyang could finally fully display his construction talent. As for Jun Changshao, he did not idle around. When the disciples were building the stronghold, he still relied on the treasure detector to search for opportunities. The territory would expand every once in a while. This expansion speed could not be compared to dozens of planes added together. Central State, Altar. After Jun Changshao stole another opportunity and returned to the stronghold, the time shown on the Earth Spirit instrument was suddenly shortened to 2 years. What? The high priest jumped to his feet and exclaimed, "Why is the time to enter the planar battlefield sped up?" Ever since the upper realm issued the order for the Starfall continent to enter the interplanar battlefield, there was a countdown on the earthly spirit instrument. There were originally 3 years left, but now, there was suddenly a year left. Of course, it was unbelievable. What's going on? Don't tell me you want us to send ourselves to our deaths a year in advance. Despair appeared in the eyes of the elders. The sudden appearance of the Demon Emperor's Gate had disturbed the peace of all the major sections. Now that they had been in the planar battlefield for almost a year, it was definitely a case of, when it rains, it pours. AI. The high priest shook his head and said, inform all the major sects about this. Yes. On the same day, the news that they would be entering the planar battlefield a year in advance spread among the major sects of the Starfall continent. Damn it! A patriarch of a major sect said angrily, time is running out again. Patriarch, we have to find the Demon Emperor's gate as soon as possible. Otherwise, once we enter the planar battlefield, they will take the opportunity to stir up trouble, and the entire continent will suffer a great disaster. That's right. That patriarch said, we have to get rid of this great threat within 2 years. Because the time to enter the planar battlefield had been brought forward, all the major sects realized the severity of the problem. Thus, all sorts of meetings were held, and countless plans were made to deal with the Demon Emperor's gate. However, because they couldn't find a place to hide, they couldn't find a solution. June Patriarch. In the dining hall, the visiting Mu Changheng said with a bitter face, the time to enter the planar battlefield has been sped up. There are only 2 years left. Sped up? Jun Changshao was stunned and thought to himself, could it be that it's like the bound soul bombs, it has its own temper? Speaking of the soul bombs, Go Shen wanted to cry. All these years, he had always worked hard for the sake of the sect, and he had never let his guard down. However, that thing would sometimes shorten the time for no reason. Later, Jun Changshao gradually found a pattern. If he didn't wake up at the designated time, it would be deducted. If he took a dump for too long, it would also be deducted. The most unacceptable thing was, if he took a bath for too long, it would also be deducted. Only 5 years had passed since the 100-year countdown. There should still be 95 years left. In fact, it was already 93 years. The 2 years that were shortened were naturally deducted. I clearly didn't waste my time waiting to die, nor did I treat it negatively. Why should the time be shortened? Ding! Self-detonation time remaining, 93 years, 150 days, 14 hours, 23 minutes, 32 seconds. While Jun Changshao was complaining in his heart, the countdown on the soul bombs sped up by another hour. The system said, the soul bombs have emotions. The host should treat them gently. Although Jun Changshao was full of anger and grievance, he could only grit his teeth and swallow it. Although the soul bombs were unreasonable, because the time would be deducted at any time and place, Jun Patriarch had developed a good habit of not sleeping in and taking a dump to end the battle quickly. If you gave him a phone now, he would definitely not take advantage of the time to read the news, read beep beep beep, and even more not check his WeChat moments and Weibo. It's only 2 years. Jun Changshao said, City Lord Mu, don't worry too much. With the current development of the stronghold and his reputation on the plain battlefield, even if the martial artists of the falling star continent went in now, they wouldn't be in any danger. Sigh. Mu Changheng said enviously, if I had Jun Patriarch's mentality, I wouldn't be sleeping all day. City Lord Mu, the food is cold. Munch munch. City Lord Mu took big bites of the food. At this moment, only delicious food could comfort his despair. Oh, right. Jun Changshao said, Honglian is about to break through to Wu Huang. With the help of various resources, many non-core inner sect disciples had reached the peak of the martial king level during this time. Mu Changheng heard this and became even more depressed. His daughter breaking through to Wu Huang was something worth celebrating, but after that, she had to enter the plain battlefield. Sigh. Mu Changheng shook his head and said, what will come will come. We can't avoid it. We can only resign ourselves to fate. Jun Patriarch. Can I have another bowl of fried rice? The inner sect disciples of the sect of all times, Lu Qianqian, Li Qingyang, and the others were the absolute core. Li Tiantian, Sima Zhongda, Mu Honglian, Huoling, Chu Xiunan, and the other Heavenly Mandate Academy students who joined later were in the second echelon. Because of their spiritual roots and the late entry, there was a gap between them and the first batch of core disciples. However, today, they had all reached the peak of the martial king level. One day, Jun Changshao gathered these people and gave them the true Yang set and the Surge Talisman. He took them into the plain battlefield. On the battlefield, Li Tiantian broke through to Wu Huang with the help of the talisman. He flew around the stronghold and laughed excitedly, "I'm in the sky, I'm finally in the sky. Ha 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 ha." Hall Leader Z. Jun Changshao said, "I'll leave these new recruits to you. Take them out to gain experience." The Purple King said calmly, "Follow me." Whoosh! Whoosh! Li Tiantian, Mu Honglian, and the others flew out of the stronghold. It was not until they were far away that they saw cultivators who were comparable to Wu Huang or even half-saints. They were shocked and said, "There are so many masters here. Look, it's the warriors of the falling star continent. Retreat, retreat, retreat." The Sect of All Time's disciples wore bright uniforms, so when they were discovered by the warriors, they immediately fled as if they had seen a ghost. Li Tiantian said in surprise, "Hall Leader Z, they seem to be afraid of us." Mu Honglian, Huo Ling, and the others were also very puzzled. They had heard from their senior brothers that there were many masters in the plain battlefield, and they were very unfriendly. They had to be careful when they entered. However, they were scared away when they saw them. The situation was completely different from what they had said. Chapter 959. Li Tiantian, Mu Honglian, and the others were very depressed. They had entered the dimensional battlefield with high hopes, hoping to fight against higher-level powerhouses. However, after wandering around outside for half a day, the martial artists they met all ran away like frightened rabbits. In the past, the martial artists were unfriendly to the falling star continent and wanted to take merit points from them. Now, it was the falling star continent that was unfriendly to them. The situation had completely reversed. There was no other way. Li Tiantian and the others could only change their clothes and disguise themselves. Only then could they find a yellow-level powerhouse and fight with them. They benefited a lot from it and then returned to their sects to digest it. This won't do. Jun Changshao was a little depressed. The dimensional battlefield was for disciples to fight and become stronger. However, not only did they not want to play with him, but they also deliberately avoided him. It was completely meaningless. The system said, "It's your fault for killing tens of thousands of people. If it were me, I wouldn't play with you either." Fuck. Jun Changshao said, "If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have taken the initiative to snatch the opportunity. I would have let them all target me." Dear participant, when the falling star continent reaches a certain number of people in a certain area, you can challenge a certain plane and fight it out in the slaughter field, the female system said. If he had a choice, Jun Changshao really wanted to change the system that dissed him all day and change it to this gentle and super nice female system. The system, slaughter field. Jun Changshao said. The female system explained in a sweet voice, "The upper realm is worried that the lower realms will reach a tacit agreement not to fight each other, so they set a rule that all newly entered planes must enter the slaughter field." Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "They don't want to, so they have to do something beyond their ability." How many people? How big does it have to be to declare war? At least 2,000 people, and the area has to be the size of a town. Jun Changshao definitely couldn't take out 2,000 people. After all, no matter how much he cheated, it would take some time for 2,000 disciples to break through Wu Huang. As for the size of a town, it was infinitely close, so it wasn't a big problem. However, Jun Changshao asked, "If I challenge a plane, they also have to meet the number and area requirements?" "Yes," the female system said. "Forget it then." Jun Changshao said, "I'm here to let my disciples gain experience, not to let them fight thousands of people with dozens of people." He had no interest in participating in the slaughtering Azura field, so he continued to focus on expanding the area. Ding! Sect disciples have completed the mission and will receive 20 achievement points. Ding! Sect achievement value, 501,050,000. Jun Changshao was overjoyed. We've finally reached the upper limit. Ever since the number of disciples had been filled, the disciples had been doing sect missions. Their achievement value had increased by varying degrees every day. Today, they had finally met the requirements to increase their achievement value. Schwa! He pulled open the system panel. A button to upgrade appeared on the sect's construction. Jun Changshao tapped on it with his mind, and a crisp prompt sounded in his ears. Ding! Sect construction upgraded to level 9. The upper limit for sect members, contribution points, and achievement points has been increased. The sect's divine weapon pavilion is open. When the notification ended, the system data panel suddenly changed sect construction, level 9 sect members, 500,007,000. Sect contribution points, 49,000,070,000. Sect achievement value, 107,000. It can't be. After seeing the increase in the upper limit, Jun Changshao broke down. Why did it only increase by 20,000 and not from 50,000 to 100,000? The system said, the author didn't calculate it well at the beginning and let the host reach the upper limit of the number of members in a third-rate sect. Therefore, he will definitely cut it down later to match the level and number of members. Fuck! Jun Chang scolded with a smile. The upper limit didn't matter because he was more concerned about the Divine Weapon Pavilion, so he quickly tapped on the Divine Weapon Pavilion. Shio! A small panel popped up. This was a panel similar to the Alchemy Pavilion and the Forging Pavilion, but there was no 3D projection device. Instead, it was more like the system store with many small grids. Wang! Suddenly, rows of grids flashed with golden light, giving people the feeling that it was the equipment panel of those players who were fully equipped with golden divine equipment in the level 999 game. Shio shio shio. Under the golden light, a sword with a dragon coiled around it slowly appeared in the first grid, and the words, Dark Gold, Dragon Blade, were written. Jun Changshao said, just by looking at the name, it looks awesome. Shio shio shio. Then, a picture of a gun appeared in the second grid, and the words, Daybreak, Shatter the Sky, were written. Is there an introduction? Jun Changshao tapped on the first picture, and the details immediately popped up. Divine Weapon, Dark Gold, Dragon Blade. Grade, Early Divine Grade. Condition, user must be a Lingyan Pavilion disciple. Price, 10,000 contribution points. Divine Grade. Jun Changshao said in surprise, this is a bit amazing. Although he found a lot of equipment in the dimensional battlefield, they were all around the Earth grade. Corresponding to the falling star continent, they were only at the Saint grade. As for the divine grade, he had never seen one before. User must be a Lingyan Pavilion disciple. That's right. The system said, only Lingyan Pavilion disciples are qualified to use it. Can I use it? No. Jun Changshao almost fell. The level 8 Lingyan Pavilion was useless to him. Would the level 9 Divine Weapon Pavilion be useless to him? No way. He quickly tapped on Daybreak and Shatter the Sky. The condition that appeared was still that he had to be a Lingyan Pavilion disciple to use it. It's fine if I can't use it. Jun Changshao said weakly, but why do I still have to spend 10,000 contribution points? Do I have so many contribution points that I have nowhere to spend them? Based on the current situation. The system said, it's like this. Gosheng didn't have many contribution points on the system interface. Occasionally, he would use them to buy martial arts training facilities. However, when disciples went to the life and death secret realm, the system helped him suppress a lot. If there was no need, he could go and buy a lot of contribution points. Okay. Jun Changshao was speechless. Shio. Shio. The grid in the Divine Weapon Pavilion was still generating all kinds of weapons. There were sabers, spears, swords, halberds, axes, hooks, and tridents. There was no exception. The new divine weapons all required disciples to be in the Lingyan Pavilion to use them. Sigh. Jun Changshao sighed and said, the Lingyan Pavilion can only accommodate 24 people. It seems that there are only 24 weapons. He guessed wrong. Because after the 24 weapons were gathered, there were more weapons appearing one by one. Jun Changshao tapped on the weapon named Purple Star, Shooting Star. The level that appeared was Saint rank. The requirement was 50 contribution points in the Lingyan Pavilion, and the price was 5,000 contribution points. The system said, it seems that the divine weapons in the Divine Weapon Pavilion are not only for the occupants to use. As long as you have a certain amount of contribution points, you can also use them. Jun Changshao said listlessly, I can't use them. As long as one was a disciple, they would more or less receive contribution points in the Lingyan Pavilion. However, as a patriarch, he didn't have this function. Unless the requirement was 0 contribution points, it would be impossible for him to use them. Shio. Shio. Another pile of weapons appeared one after another. Divine weapons appeared again, and they were categorized in a separate grid. Jun Changshao tapped on it and almost vomited blood. This kind of high-level divine weapon didn't require contribution points in the Lingyan Pavilion. However, the requirement was that one was an elder of the sect, and the price was still 10,000 contribution points. The grid was still producing weapons, and the subsequent requirement was to be at the Hall Master level. Damn it! Jun Changshao held his head and said, this is purposely to perfectly avoid me. Just as he was about to put the Divine Weapon Pavilion back, the last grid suddenly flashed with a colorful light. Then, a spear-like weapon gradually appeared, and the words, pointing out the world, were written on it. Pointing out the world. Jun Changshao scrutinized it carefully, and the expression on his face suddenly collapsed. The lower half of the weapon was similar to a spear. However, when it came to the spearhead, the style changed drastically. This was because it was not a spearhead, nor was it a blade. Instead, it was a palm with the index and middle fingers standing upright. It was a one-handed killing pose, and it emitted an aura of pointing out the world. What the fuck is pointing out the world? Jun Changshao roared, it's obviously pointing out the ass. Chapter 960. Although there were all sorts of strange weapons appearing in the Divine Weapon Pavilion, at least they were still within the realm of understanding. The last one, the World Pointer, was fucking bullshit. Sigh. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, it's getting more and more improper. The system said, the host infected it. What does this have to do with me? Jun Changshao rolled his eyes and clicked on the strange weapon, showing a detailed introduction Divine Weapon, World Pointer Grade, Above Divine Condition, Patriarch Exclusive. Price, 20,000 contribution points. Seeing the words, Above Divine, Jun Changshao's eyes widened. There were so many weapons, and the highest was only Divine. The last weapon was actually above Divine. No wonder it was covered in a rainbow light. Wait. Patriarch Exclusive. After seeing this condition, Jun Changshao blurted out uncultured, fuck. First, it was the Lingyan Pavilion disciple's weapon, then it was the Elder's weapon, and finally it was his own personal weapon. He, who was complaining before, could not be happy now, because he looked at the unique design again and said, if I take this weapon out in front of others, I'll be a laughing stock. What Jun Changshao could not accept the most was that the weapons in the Divine Weapon Pavilion did not cost more than 10,000 contribution points. Why was his personal weapon worth 20,000 contribution points? Even if you want to bully others, you can't bully others like this. The system said, it's good enough that you have it, but the host still dislikes it. The shape of the weapon is normal, so it doesn't matter if it's expensive. Jun Changshao roared, but this kind of personal weapon, do you want me to take it out and stab others in the ass? The system said, as the leader of a sect, it's inappropriate for you to do this. Yes. Jun Changshao said. Even if he changed his personal weapon to a sword or even a dagger, but this kind of weapon was similar to the Millennium Kill, to take it out, the system said, but that's for others. For the shameless host, I think it's a perfect match. Perfect my ass. In terms of quality, the newly appeared Divine Weapon Pavilion was indeed very good. It was even better than the fortuitous encounters in the planar battlefield. However, the requirement to spend contribution points was a headache for Jun Changshao. After all, he couldn't afford to give each core disciple one. Moreover, there were restrictions in the Lingyan Pavilion. Currently, only Li Qingyang and Lu Wanshi met the requirements. Schwa. Jun Changshao opened the Lingyan Pavilion and said, Zue Ji and the others should meet the requirements. As expected. Originally, Xiao Ziji only had around 30 merit points. Now, his merit points had risen to 100 points. He had met the requirements to enter. That's fast, Jun Changshao said. The system said, I've never seen the host look at it on a daily basis. Perhaps this disciple has already met the requirements and has been neglected by you for a long time. Shut up. Jun Changshao pressed the confirm button. The Lingyan Pavilion shook slightly. The words that were originally written began to separate and form a lifelike portrait. Li Qingyang's portrait was a sketch of a desk. Lu Wanshi was busy cooking in the kitchen. Xiao Ziji was in a horse stance with a shield in front of him. He looked very imposing. Disciple Xiao Ziji has successfully entered the Lingyan Pavilion and become one of the 24 meritorious officials. He can help the host share the system's sect functions. Please choose from the following. Alchemy Pavilion Control, Smithing Pavilion Control, Talisman Pavilion Control. Jun Changshao thought for a while and said, let Zue Ji manage the Smithing Pavilion. Confirm. Pill Control, ding. Disciple Xiao Ziji has obtained the Smithing Pavilion Control. He can automatically match the number of ores and equipment to be refined. Xiao Ziji, who was busy in the stronghold, was stunned. His soul instantly merged into the void. What is this place? Zue Ji, you have done your best for the sect. I am very pleased. Today, I will pass on the power of smithing to you with my supreme ability. Jun Patriarch began to bluff again. Xiao Ziji understood everything. He said with a serious expression, Disciple understands. Disciple will definitely not disappoint Patriarch. After the Alchemy Pavilion, Jun Changshao arranged the Smithing Pavilion's control. He was one step closer to being a hands-off manager. Wang. After Xiao Ziji came out of the Smithing Pavilion, his spiritual energy, muscles, bones, and blood began to transform. His physical strength was also increasing bit by bit. Whoosh whoosh. The aura of advancement exploded. Li Fei, Tian Qi, and the others all looked over in shock. How did junior brother Xiao, who was moving bricks, suddenly break through? The momentum of advancement continued for a while. Xiao Ziji entered rank 2 from rank 1. Wu Huang. Although the advancement was only one level, the improvement of the physical body was the most important. He clenched his fist and felt the changes in his physical body. With a burning gaze, he said, my defense is stronger than before. As for how strong it was, it could only be confirmed through actual combat. Suddenly, Xiao Ziji realized that lines appeared on the back of his right hand. In the end, they formed the word, shield. Thus, he asked in surprise, what does this mean? Shield. Jun Changshao looked at the Lingyan Pavilion. Xiao Ziji's portrait was stamped with the word, shield. He touched his chin and said, shield represents defense. It is not much different from the defense I thought of previously. Are there any other disciples who meet the requirements? First, he chose Lu Qianqian, which was worth 60 merit points. Then, he chose Yi Xingqian, which was worth 53 merit points. Although the two of them were a little far from the maximum, Jun Changshao was already very satisfied. After all, they were only worth 10 and 7 points. Now that they had improved so much, it meant that they had contributed a lot to the sect. The Lingyan Pavilion's merit points could decide whether or not a disciple could enter. It also reflected how much the disciple had contributed to the sect. Jun Changshao continued to check on Li Fei, Tian Qi, and the others. Although they did not meet the requirements, most of them were around 80 to 90 points. They were already close to the requirements. That's right. Let's look at Xinyao's. This girl already had 60 merit points before. Then, she comprehended the array and helped him a lot. She might have already met the requirements. As expected. When the name, Shengguan Xinyao, was written on the blank piece of paper, the merit points that appeared were 100 points. Xinyao's martial arts might not be outstanding, but she has the strongest brain. This Lingyan Pavilion must have a place for her. Jun Changshao thought for a moment. The final point was to confirm. Since the Lingyan Pavilion's function was not to decide who could enter based on martial arts, he would not insist on having disciples with high cultivation levels. Lu Wanshi, who was in charge of the dining room, could enter. Shengguan Xinyao, who created martial arts, could also enter. Wang. There was a slight vibration. A portrait gradually appeared on the white paper with the name carved on it. The content of the portrait was Shengguan Xinyao sitting in front of a desk. Thick books were placed around her. The paper under her hand not only had words similar to incantations, but it also had drawings of arrays. Xinyao studies martial arts secret manuals every day. She also has to study arrays. I won't give her the right to control it, Jun Changshao said. The system said, the host is very biased towards female disciples. If Li Qingyang and Xiao Ziji heard it, they would definitely agree. Shengguan Xinyao, who was studying secret manuals in the sect of all times, entered the Lingyan Pavilion. She sat there with a dull expression. Many martial arts knowledge that she had never had before appeared in her mind. I understand now, she came back to her senses and looked at the martial arts ideas that she had memorized. Suddenly, she had a deeper understanding and began to make large changes. Suddenly, she lowered her head and looked at the back of her right hand. A flickering wisdom character gradually appeared. Whether it's creating martial arts or modifying arrays, it can't be separated from wisdom. Obtaining the wisdom character seal is a well-deserved name, Jun Changshao said. Currently, there were 4 portraits of disciples in the Lingyan Pavilion. They were Li Qingyang, Lu Wanshi, Xiao Ziji, and Shengguan Xinyao. Their seals were steady, kitchen, shield, and wisdom, respectively. Chapter 961. Jun Changshao looked at some of the core disciples and realized that they did not meet the entry requirements, so he kept the panel. The entry requirement for the Lingyan Pavilion was to be a disciple of the sect, so the elders and hall masters could not be nominated. However, from the perspective of the Divine Weapon Pavilion, it was actually quite good. After all, as long as there was a position, there was no need to accumulate merit points. Should I buy it? Jun Changshao opened the Divine Weapon Pavilion again and began to think carefully. The weapons inside, other than his own, were all super awesome in terms of appearance and name. If he gave them to his disciples, their combat power would soar. After finding many opportunities and giving them to his disciples, Go Xing gradually realized the importance of equipment if one's cultivation was not enough. If his disciples had their own divine weapon, it would be equivalent to increasing the strength of the sect. Sigh. After some hesitation, Jun Changshao set his eyes on the world pointer. Since it was a new system function and there was a patriarch's weapon, he had to consider himself first. Buy it. The system said, after all, this function was only unlocked at level 9. It will definitely surprise the host. Jun Changshao. If it was a proper weapon, he would definitely not hesitate. However, the two-fingered weapon was too weird. Even if it was curved, he could buy it to scratch his itch. Sigh. Jun Changshao sighed and said, let's take a gamble. Although the system often instigated him to spend, at the moment, it was indeed not a loss, so it was still quite reliable. He clicked on the world pointer, and cancel buttons appeared. Buy. Ding. Host spent 20,000 contribution points and received world pointer X1. It has been transferred to the spatial ring. Ding. Sect contribution points, 29,000,700,000. Jun Changshao waved his hand and took out a weapon that looked like a spear and a scepter. Seeing that it looked like it was carved out of some kind of stone, he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Damn it, the middle finger and index finger are protruding. Do I really have to stab the butt during a fight? In any case, he was the patriarch of a third-rate sect. If he had to go to the back every time he fought, he would definitely embarrass himself. Although the pointer of rivers and mountains was embarrassing, when Jun Changshao held it in his hand, the powerful aura it released was still very good. It was obvious. It was much stronger than Jade Dragon Asks the Heaven's Sword, True Yang Sword, and even Green Dragon Crescent Blade. He had spent 20,000 contribution points to buy such a weird item. If he wasn't a little more impressive, Jun Changshao would really be angered to tears. Patriarch. Li Fei walked over and asked in surprise, what is this? What a special feeling. Jun Changshao said with difficulty, weapons. Weapon? Li Fei's eyes were filled with surprise, and then he said with a smile, it's very compatible with the patriarch. This was definitely flattery, but Lord Gosheng suddenly thought of the system's teasing just now, and the anger in his body suddenly soared. Wang. The pointer of rivers and mountains seemed to have sensed its owner's anger and suddenly trembled slightly. Suddenly, a light began to gather at the two fingers pointing to the sky. Jun Changshao was surprised. At this moment, he could feel his anger flowing from his palm into the weapon. Huff huff. Suddenly, a bright energy gathered between the two fingers. Whoosh! A special energy rushed in through the palm and into Jun Changshao's sea of consciousness, causing him to have a strong urge to teach Li Fei. How magical! Anger can actually be converted into energy. Just as Go Sheng was exclaiming, Li Fei, who was standing at the side, had a slight change in expression, and a chill came from his buttocks. Fly. Jun Changshao narrowed his eyes and said, I'm not too sure about the power of this weapon. Today, I'll use you to test it. This expression and the chill coming from his buttocks made Li Fei realize that something was wrong. Then, he ran and howled, Patriarch, your disciple is going to carry bricks. Where are you running to? Jun Changshao strode forward and suddenly waved the pointer of rivers and mountains. He locked onto Li Fei, who had already run a few hundred feet away, and shouted, Point. Whoosh! As soon as his voice fell, the energy gathered between the two fingers suddenly burst out, and then a long beam of light was dragged out. Li Fei, who had run far away, had a drastic change in expression. The chill on his buttocks turned into a chill. Then, his expression collapsed and he roared loudly, No! Bang! On a floating mountain in the stronghold, Xiao Ziji placed a big pile of bricks on the ground and then stretched lazily. Immediately, his eyes widened. Because suddenly, a beam of light burst out from the main peak. Then, he saw Li Fei fly to the sky with a whoosh. At the same time, his hands were covering his buttocks, and he was screaming, Ah, ah, ah. Li Qingyang, who was measuring on the other peaks, also saw it. So, he said in surprise, what's going on? Damn! Long Xiang raised his hand to look at the sky and said in surprise, Senior Brother Li flew so fast. Gradually, everyone's face froze. Because after Li Fei reached the highest point while covering his buttocks, he free fell and finally hit the ground with a bang. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others suddenly realized that this guy didn't fly up by himself. He was beaten up. Let's go. Let's go and see. Whoosh. Whoosh. Not long after, the disciples came to the scene of the fall and found that the ground was in the shape of the Chinese character, Tai. Li Fei was lying on the ground with his eyes rolled up. His buttocks were actually smoking. Li Qingyang and the others' mouths twitched. At this moment, they understood that their junior brother, senior brother, had his buttocks stolen. Jun Changshao, who was standing on the main peak, withdrew the finger of mountains and rivers and said in surprise, "It even has a tracking function. This weapon is a bit awesome." Li Fei's speed was not slow. He could have perfectly avoided it. But in the end, no matter how fancy he was, no matter how he dodged left and right, the chasing beam was always locked onto his buttocks. The system said, from the energy just now, it shouldn't be the strongest state of the weapon. Nonsense. Jun Changshao said, I deliberately suppressed it. Otherwise, it would have been pierced. Using anger to transform energy, the host didn't lose anything by buying it. It's hard to tell whether it's a loss or not without trying it on a higher level master. After all, Li Fei was just Wu Huang. With his current strength, he could even poke the sky with an ordinary stick. So, only by fighting with Wu Sheng could he prove his power. Suddenly, Jun Changshao found that there was an arc-shaped groove in the area where his right hand was holding. It looked like some kind of trigger device, so he said in surprise, "Does it have other functions?" The system said, "Maybe it's a special effect." Jun Changshao's eyes lit up. He pressed his thumb on it. Ding! Fingerprint match successful. User is the patriarch of the sect of all times. Requirements met. Loading ultimate skill 1%. 10%. 20%. Ultimate skill? Jun Changshao said in surprise, "That's a bit awesome." 100%. Loading successful. Ultimate skill, 1 look through, activated. Huff huff, after a while, the finger of mountains and rivers instantly exploded with gray air waves, then surged into the sky and gradually gathered together. Li Qingyang and the others, who had just dug Li Fei out, suddenly felt a strong gust of wind blowing around them. They all turned their heads to look and saw a mass of dark clouds gathering in the sky above the main peak, blocking out the sun. What is this? Did the patriarch use a high-level skill? While the disciples were still in shock, the dark clouds hundreds of feet high in the sky separated into two. One of the clouds began to rotate on its own, gradually forming a whirlpool shape, while the other gathered into a palm with 2 fingers pointing vertically. Jun Changshao stood proudly with the finger of mountains and rivers in his hand. He glanced at the disciples on the opposite peak and shouted loudly, "Babies, isn't it cool?" Huff huff, at this moment, the cloud palm with 2 fingers pointed directly at the center of the whirlpool, and the 2 clouds suddenly merged together. Ka! Space instantly shattered. Ah! 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 Li Qingyang, Xiao Zuiji, and the others, who were originally dumbstruck, suddenly felt their minds tremble. An invisible force directly attacked them, and then they all fell to the ground. Their hands covered their smoking buttocks, and their expressions were brilliant beyond compare as they wailed miserably. Jun Changshao said in shock, "What's going on?" Chapter 962. Jun Changshao was very puzzled by the activation of Finger of Mountains and Rivers, which caused the disciples to fall to the ground while covering their buttocks. Could it be that it was an indiscriminate attack that did not differentiate between enemies and teammates? As long as they were in the range, they would be hit. If that was the case, why were Lu Qianqian and Ling Yuanxue fine on the other mountain? Could it be that the killing move is only effective on males? Wait. Suddenly, Lord Chengshao recalled that the ultimate skill was called, see through one glance. His expression collapsed as he said, it can't be because I glanced at them, right? Bingo. Finger of mountains and rivers killing move, see through, would automatically lock onto whoever the user looked at. Then, after the two clouds merged, the user would be attacked by an invisible force. This was his first time using it, so he did not understand the main points. If he was familiar with it and used it properly, Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others would not be crying while covering their buttocks. Instead, they would be screaming like pigs being slaughtered. Babies. Jun Chengshao said apologetically, I'm sorry, I didn't do it on purpose. Whoosh whoosh. The two fused clouds in the sky gradually dispersed, and the world returned to normal. However, there was still a chilling aura lingering in the air that made people feel a chill in their hearts. As for the groove that Jun Chengxiao's thumb touched, it was dark, as if it meant that it could not be used for the time being. This kind of sure-kill skill was very powerful. If he had used his piercing gaze earlier when White Egg was surrounded and killed, the scene would have been as beautiful as a painting. More importantly, there were no side effects. Jun Chengxiao said, although the design is a bit weird, and the killing move is a bit wretched, overall, it's still not bad. It's worthy of being my exclusive weapon. The system said, that's why it's a perfect match. Damaged chrysanthemum, wounds all over the ground, your smile is already yellow. On the Sect of All Time's martial arts field, the sound system was playing a song. Lu Wanshi and Yao Menjing were leading their fellow disciples to dance. On the construction site of the planar battlefield, Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others were busy working. Their walking posture was especially strange. It could be seen that although the pain had dissipated, the discomfort from their buttocks was still affecting their bodies. Inside the main palace, Jun Chengshao played with the world's pointer lovingly and poured his spiritual energy into it, hoping to activate more of its functions. However, no matter how hard he tried to activate it, this divine weapon seemed to have withered and had no reaction at all. The system guessed, after unleashing its sure-kill ability, it might have entered a weakened state. It can't be. Jun Chengshao was on the verge of breaking down. You can't even use a sure-kill skill. If it was a sword, it would be fine if it withered. At least it could be used to chop people. However, this world-ruling sword was not suitable for fighting. Loss. Jun Chengshao said, a huge loss. Patriarch. Li Qingyang staggered in and said, the construction of peak number 1 has been completed. Thank you for your hard work, Jun Chengshao said. Li Qingyang said weakly, Patriarch, what kind of power was that just now? It actually caught us off guard. Recalling the scene of being attacked by the invisible power, the camera suddenly turned to the training field of the Sect of All Times. A pleasant singing voice came from the sound system, broken chrysanthemums, wounds all over the ground. Jun Chengshao said, this is the sure-kill skill of my personal divine weapon. It's called, see through at a glance. Personal divine weapon, sure-kill skill. Li Qingyang was confused. Qingyang. Jun Chengshao walked down and patted him on the shoulder. During this period of time, you've been rebuilding the sect and building the stronghold. You've really put in a lot of effort. I'll reward you with a divine weapon. Ding. The host has spent 10,000 contribution points. Obtained heavenly kill, Thunder Mark X1. It has been transferred to the spatial ring. Ding. Sect contribution points, 19,000,700,000. Patriarch. Li Qingyang said, how can this disciple, Shua? Before he could finish speaking, Jun Chengshao waved his hand and handed over a dark golden sword with some lightning wrapped around it. This was the heavenly kill, Thunder Mark. From the name, it could be seen that it should be related to the thunder attribute. Jun Chengshao was not stingy when he bought it for Li Qingyang. It was also because he had worked hard recently and had the thunder punishment body. Because it required a large amount of contribution points, although there were many divine weapons in the divine weapon pavilion, they were destined to not be able to buy all of them. Thus, they had to choose the most suitable one for their disciples. However, Go Sheng was currently crying silently. Looking at his disciple's personal divine weapon and then looking at his own, there was no harm if there was no comparison. Li Qingyang, who was about to refuse, saw the sword that was wrapped in lightning from the hilt to the scabbard, and subconsciously reached out to take it. Patriarch! He exclaimed, this weapon is extraordinary. Yes. Jun Chengshao said, divine grade. Divine grade? Li Qingyang was stunned. Oh my god. This was the highest level weapon in the Falling Star continent. He did not expect the Patriarch to give it to him. Shua. Li Qingyang held the sword and cupped his hands, saying, thank you, Patriarch, for giving me this sword, this disciple, don't talk nonsense. Jun Chengshao interrupted, hurry up and pull it out. Let's see if it fits. After he bought it, his soul tried to pull it out from the spatial ring. In the end, not only did he not succeed, but he was also sent flying. This kind of divine weapon could only be used by the disciples of the Purple Smoke Pavilion. Not to mention Go Sheng, who was a sect master, even Yixingqian and He Wudi could not pull it out of the scabbard. Yes. Li Qingyang took a deep breath and placed his hand on the hilt. Clang, hiss, hiss, hiss. The heavenly kill, which was about 1 meter long, was unsheathed. The body of the sword was white and shiny, and both sides were engraved with dense lines. The edge of the sword gathered golden light, giving off a feeling of invincibility. 1 word, handsome. 2 words, super handsome. At this moment, the word, steady, on the back of Li Qingyang's hand suddenly appeared. The word, steady, also appeared on the hilt of the heavenly kill and the heavenly kill. The two seemed to have established a contract in an instant. Jun Chengshao was about to cry. His disciple's personal divine weapon was too damn cool. Looking at his own unique divine weapon, he almost could not help but take it out from the spatial ring and throw it to the readers outside the phone screen. What kind of stupid thing is this? I don't want it anymore. Patriarch. Li Qingyang's eyes were burning. This disciple and this sword have established a mutual understanding. Let's go out and try, Jun Chengshao said. Yes. Main peak. Training field. Li Qingyang held the heavenly kill and stood proudly with the heavenly kill. Li Fei, 7 fields, and the others who were resting saw this and were shocked. The sword in second senior brother's hand is so domineering. Tisk, Yixingqian, who was sitting on a boulder far away, took a look and noticed that there were many lines on the sword. He said calmly, swords are used to kill people, not for showing off. Knight Emperor was lucky that he was not there at the time and avoided being seen through. Otherwise, he would be holding his head and squatting in a corner, roaring, a stain on my life. He Wudi thought, the sword has the aura of thunder. It should be a rare thunder-type weapon. At this moment, Li Qingyang's eyes turned cold. His right hand gripped the hilt of the sword tightly. Spiritual energy and thunder punishment body burst out and quickly poured into the sword. Hiss hiss hiss, the lines on the heavenly kill and the heavenly kill instantly shone with a golden light. It felt like it was instantly upgraded from +0 to +99999. Oh my god. Li Fei, 7 fields, and the others opened their mouths. Shua. Yixingqian stood up and said in disbelief, divine. Divine grade? He Wudi also stood up and said in shock, how can such a powerful thunder-type weapon exist in the mortal continent? Weird. In front of the teleportation gate, the Purple King was confused, why would I suddenly have the thought of entering the dimension battlefield? Ta! He still walked in. When the Purple King walked into the stronghold through the teleportation gate, he saw the golden light on the training field. The thunder type exploded, and his eyes widened. Mandatory question. Why would Hall Leader Z enter the Dimension battlefield at this moment? Chapter 963. When Li Qingyang injected spiritual energy and thunder-type power into the Heavenly Assassin and Thunder Mark, a mysterious force from the east entered the Purple King's body, forcing him to enter the dimensional battlefield. Why? Because all three of them had to be present. This sword. The Purple King widened his eyes and said, could it be from the upper world? Has it been nurtured by the 9 Destructions lightning pool? Thunder-type weapons were very common in the mortal continent. They only needed to be embedded with a thunder-type crystal core. However, after Li Qingyang activated the Heavenly Assassin and Thunder Mark, the thunder-type power had exceeded the limits of the crystal core in terms of purity and strength. Therefore, Yi Xingqian, He Wudi, and the Purple King instantly judged that this was not the mortal continent. The weapon that should exist here might have come from Patriarch. Li Qingyang's eyes were burning. Can I find an opponent to test my sword on? Hall Master Z. Jun Changshao said, spar with me. The Purple King's mouth twitched. It seemed that he suddenly had the idea of entering the dimensional battlefield not only to show off his surprise but also to spar with him. Okay. The Purple King walked over. This kind of explosive lightning attribute weapon made him very curious about how strong it was. Hall Master Z. Li Qingyang said, let's go out and spar. It was not easy to complete the construction of the main peak. It would definitely not be damaged by the battle. Dozens of miles away from the stronghold of the falling star continent, Li Qingyang floated in the air with his shining weapon. Opposite him, the Purple King was wearing his school uniform and stood with his hands behind his back. Xiao Ziji and the others stood in the distance, watching intently. Hall Master Z was an amazing person who could fight against many alone. Second's senior brother asked him to spar with him. Was Second's senior brother very confident in his weapon? That was not the case. The main reason was that the Purple King was very powerful and could allow Li Qingyang to unleash his power without restraint. If they were from the same sect, they would more or less hold back to avoid hurting each other. Simply put, Hall Master Z was very resistant to beatings. Let's begin, Jun Changshao said. Shua. Li Qingyang flew over with his sword in hand, and the power of thunder and lightning on the sword became even more intense. Yi Xingqian thought, with this sword, I am not his match. He Wudi thought so too. The two of them were stronger than Li Qingyang, but with the support of powerful weapons, they would definitely offset the difference in strength. Swish! Golden light flickered, and golden sword chi burst forth. Hiss hiss hiss. Because it carried the power of thunder and lightning, the sound of thunder splashing could be heard clearly. The Purple King gently raised his hand and caught the sword chi in his palm. He shook his head and said, Kid, although your sword is strong, it can't do anything to the Hall Master. Boom! With a sudden burst of strength, the sword chi shattered. As a demon king who had single-handedly fought against so many earth-ranked powerhouses, his physical strength was extremely terrifying. Even with the support of divine-ranked equipment, it was difficult to injure him. Li Qingyang was not surprised. As long as they could force Hall Master Z to rip off his underwear, that would be their victory. Swish! Swish! He used his movement technique, and streaks of thunder-type sword chi tore through space along with the heavenly slaughter thunder mark. Boom! 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 The Purple King stood on the same spot, and his hands moved frequently. He either sent the sword chi flying or crushed it directly, displaying his terrifying strength. Sigh. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, I thought divine-ranked weapons were very powerful, but it still can't do anything to a saint tier. The system said, Big brother, Is your Hall Master Z an ordinary saintier? Moreover, it added, the power of a high-grade weapon depends on the user's realm. If second disciple was Wu Xing now, the situation would be different with a divine-ranked weapon. That's true. Jun Changshao said telepathically, Qingyang, your exclusive divine weapon should have a button. Activate it and fight with Hall Master Z. He wanted to see what the sure-kill skill of the Heavenly Slaughter Thunder Mark was. Button? Li Qingyang locked his mind on the indentation on the sword hilt and said, is it this? Swoosh. He pressed his thumb on it. Huff huff. Suddenly, the Heavenly Slaughter Thunder Mark in his hand trembled violently. Then, it flew out and hung in the air, shining with a dazzling golden light. The Purple King looked up, and his eyes were filled with surprise. Huff huff, the Heavenly Slaughter Thunder Mark's hilt was facing up, and the sword tip was facing down. A special attribute quickly burst out from the sword, and then it gathered into the shape of a thundercloud and gradually spread out. Xiao Ziji, Long Xiang, and the others saw the clouds gathering again, and they suddenly remembered the fear of being dominated by a mysterious force. So, they quickly retreated and subconsciously protected their butts. Eldest senior sister. Ling Yuanxue was puzzled. What's wrong with senior brothers? They're sick, Lu Qianqian said lightly. Hiss hiss hiss. After a while, the thundercloud that had expanded by more than 100 feet spurted out lightning snakes, and then gathered in the center of the Heavenly Slaughter Mark. In the Thunder Mark, the sword tip gradually condensed into a beam of lightning. This, Jun Changshao was shocked. It's a bit like the thunder punishment to punish oneself. Releasing the thundercloud and nourishing the sword with the power of thunder. It must have been tempered in the thunder pool of 9 destruction. The Purple King thought to himself. Li Qingyang, who was standing in mid-air, closed his eyes. The Heavenly Slaughter Thunder Mark kept gathering lightning, and his body was gradually shrouded in golden light. At the same time, a memory that did not belong to him was transmitted to his sea of consciousness, and finally evolved into a move. Swoosh! Suddenly, Li Qingyang opened his eyes, and there was lightning in his eyes. He said, Thunder control, divine punishment. Boom! As soon as his voice fell, the Heavenly Slaughter Thunder Mark shone brightly, and the beam of light gathered at the sword tip instantly shot out, forming a thunder punishment array and slashing down on the Purple King directly below. What's that? The martial artists in the plain hundreds of miles away saw a sudden burst of lightning in the meteorite continent's stronghold area, and they all widened their eyes. Boom! At this moment, there was an explosion in the area where the lightning fell. Although they were far away, they could hear it clearly, especially when they saw ripples in the air. For a moment, all the martial artists were deeply shocked. On the hill, the area where the Purple King was standing was crazily disturbed by lightning and thunder. After a long time, everything calmed down. The Purple King was wearing red underwear, and his muscular body was exposed, but his purple hair was all standing up because of the lightning. He was not injured. He was just a little embarrassed. Boy! The Purple King said, your sword is very powerful, and I took the initiative to use 30% of my strength to defend. Li Qingyang smiled and raised his right hand. Swoosh! The Heavenly Slaughter Thunder Mark hanging in the thundercloud quickly flew down and inserted into the scabbard. He cupped his hands and said, Hall Master Z, thank you for letting me win. Patriarch. He excitedly transmitted his voice, is this a sure kill skill? That's right, Jun Changshao replied. Li Qingyang, who appeared calm on the surface, was overjoyed in his heart. He was able to force Hall Master Z to use 30% of his strength to defend himself. If he was a high-level martial emperor. No, if he was a sage to be, he might be able to defeat him by surprise. The Heavenly Slaughter Thunder Mark withered instantly after the explosion. But at least it was a sword. Even if the killing move was in cooldown, at least it was of good quality and could be used to defend against enemies. On the other hand, Go Sheng's exclusive divine weapon could not even scratch an itch. Of course. The killing move of the Heavenly Slaughter Thunder Mark was a single target attack. Compared to the killing move of the Finger of the Nation, there was still a big gap. You have already seen whether Qingyang's weapon is strong or not. In front of the main hall, Jun Changshao said with his hands behind his back, as long as you contribute more to the sect, you will have a chance to get it. Xiao Ziji and the others' eyes were burning. They naturally wanted to get such an awesome exclusive divine weapon. Patriarch Li Fei said, how can it be considered as contributing to the sect? Very simple. Jun Changshao said loudly, actively teach martial arts to your fellow sect members or participate in the sect's construction and sect missions. I will reward you sooner or later. On this day. On a certain foothold mountain that was being developed, Yi Xingchen and He Wudi were working hard. Moving bricks, laying bricks, and other construction work were not a problem at all. Higher world, Jia Hall. A few sage-like elders were discussing. The topic was how the falling star continent, which was supposed to enter only 5 years ago, had entered the dimensional battlefield in advance and killed so many people. What was even more puzzling was how some low-level fortuitous opportunities buried in the battlefield could be found by the dimensional warriors in such a short time. Ling Yao, the person in charge of the Jia Hall, said with a cold face, how do you explain this? The graceful woman shrouded in clouds said calmly, the dimensional battlefield was created by the joint efforts of many powerful beings. I am just doing my routine duties. How would I know how the falling star continent came up? Someone sneered. The way I see it, you used your ability to let them in, right? If I had such ability, would I still come to the Jia Hall to be interrogated? The graceful woman said calmly. The elders were furious. The person in charge of the Jia Hall said calmly, although this matter has nothing to do with you, as the person on duty in the dimensional battlefield this time, you can't just sit by and do nothing when a mortal plane sneaks in ahead of time. Understood. The graceful woman turned and said, I will do my duty, but, she paused and said, since the falling star continent was able to sneak into the dimensional battlefield, it might be the will of the heavens. The moment she said this, the elders' expressions changed slightly. The dimensional battlefield was created by the joint efforts of many powerful beings, and layers of barriers were set up. It was impossible for a plane to sneak in without being pointed out. For a tiny mortal plane to be able to do it, it might really be the will of the heavens. The will of the heavens is hard to predict. The person in charge of the Jia Hall was silent for a moment, then said, however, since they broke the rules, they must be punished. Light punishment, heavy punishment? The graceful woman asked. The person in charge said, a tiny low-level plane naturally doesn't need heavy punishment. Understood. The graceful woman left the Jia Hall. She knew that the other party was intimidated by her words and didn't dare to be too harsh on the falling star continent. After all, the people of the Jia Hall didn't dare to go against the will of the heavens. Speaking of which, the graceful woman returned to her own palace and leaned against the back of the chair. She thought to herself, suddenly appearing in the dimensional battlefield and being able to come and go freely, is this really the will of the heavens? Master, the elder said, since the Jia Hall wants a light punishment, what should we do? The graceful woman thought for a moment, then said, according to the authority of the enforcers, if there is a violation of the rules, we can dispatch battlefield spirits to attack the stronghold. Master, what level of battlefield spirits do you want to mobilize? Mystic as the main, earth as the support. Yes. The elder hurriedly left. The master had reduced the punishment to the lightest. Since the Jia Hall chose this difficulty, they definitely wouldn't say anything. Falling Star Continent. The elder said, you are very lucky to be protected by the master. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.